Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories.
"Daddy, please come home," were the first words out of my daughter's mouth when she called me at my duty station in Afghanistan. "What's wrong, baby?" "It's Mom, Dad." Even with the poor video quality, I could tell she was in tears. "What's wrong with Mom?" "She's seeing another man." My heart stopped. My beautiful wife of 17 years had always been so dedicated to me and Sophia, our daughter. "Honey, how do you know that?" "Surely you're mistaken." "Dad, she's out with him 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes she doesn't come home till 3 or 4 in the morning. This morning she didn't come home till almost 7. "Dad, I'm scared." I choked down the bile that had risen into my throat. "Do you know who the man is, Sophia?" "I think his name is Mark something." "Henry Bennett." "Yes, that's him. I've only seen him once when he picked Mom up. Tall, kind of skinny guy with short black and gray hair. If that's who it is, he's the state representative. He drives a big fancy car and sometimes picks Mom up in a limo." That made sense. Laura had worked on his election campaign. Maybe she was just going with him to party or something. But if that's the case, why is she coming home so late? "I need you here, Daddy. Come home, please," Sophia begged me. "Honey, I'll see what I can do. But whatever you do, don't say anything to your mom." "I want, Dad, but please hurry before something really bad happens." "I'll do my best." "I love you, Sophia." "Love you too, Dad." My name is David Thompson. I'm 40 years old and a design specialist for a large tech company. I'm also a captain in the Army Reserve, and that's why I'm currently on an 8-month assignment in Afghanistan, where I serve on the special operations. I've been married to the love of my life, Laura, for 17 years, and the fruit of our union is our awesome 16-year-old daughter, Sophia. Laura is 39, but looks even younger. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever known, 5'7", with a terrific body that actually improved after she gave birth to our daughter. Her blonde hair reaches her shoulders, and her blue eyes always sparkle when she smiles, which is often. I could honestly say our marriage has been rock solid. Even when I've been deployed, our time together has been warm and loving. I've never doubted her fidelity, nor she mine. So what happened? I didn't have a clue. I completed all the necessary paperwork for 30 days of emergency family leave and caught a flight that, 23 hours later, found me renting a car at my hometown airport and heading for home. It was Friday night at 6:30 when I stopped the car half a block from my house. The early October sun had already set, and the street lights cast an ominous glow on the surrounding neighborhood. I could see that lights were on in my living room, kitchen, and in the upstairs master suite. I could actually see my wife walk past the window a couple of times. It looked like she was getting ready to go out. I called my daughter's cell phone, and after 3 rings she picked up and spoke softly. "Daddy, is that you?" "Yes, baby. Don't say anything, but I'm here just a half block from the house." "Oh, Daddy, thank you." And I could hear her start to cry. "Is your mom going out tonight?" "I'm pretty sure. She's been in her room for over an hour. I heard the shower and now I can hear her humming. Sounds like she's pretty excited about her night." "Yeah, I guess. It makes me sick, Daddy. Why is she doing this to us?" "I don't know, Sophia, and your mom may not know either. Let's not judge her until we know what's really going on." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not completely sure. I guess I'll just follow them and get the lay of the land before I decide how to respond." "Be careful, Daddy. Do you need to change clothes?" "Nope. I figure my camo fatigues will stand out enough to create a little shock and awe when the time comes." "Good luck, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too, Sophia, and no matter what, you and I will always be together." At 7, a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway and a tall, slender, well-dressed man climbed out of the car. I thought he'd go to the door, but he talked for a few seconds on his cell phone, and the lights went out in the master suite. A minute later, the door opened and my wife stepped out onto the porch. She made sure the door locked behind her, then walked quickly toward her date with a big smile on her face. She looked stunningly beautiful, and my heart broke into a million pieces when I saw her glance back at the house to make sure Sophia wasn't watching before she gave our illustrious wife-stealing councilman a warm kiss on the mouth. He helped her into the car, and they drove away. Fortunately, I was steady enough to snap a picture of the kiss with my cell phone. I followed them at a safe distance, and, since the traffic was fairly light, I didn't have a problem staying with them. They drove across town and pulled into the parking lot of the Royal Oaks Hotel. I parked half a dozen spaces away and watched them as they exited the car and entered the building. They walked close together with their arms around each other, and I snapped another photo. It was obvious their affair had been going on for a long time. They were so comfortable together. They looked for all the world like a loving married couple out for a date night. I waited until they were inside the hotel before I put on my camo hat and sunglasses and followed them. When I got inside, I couldn't see them but wasn't concerned. I got some of the usual smiles and thank you for your service comments, which I acknowledged while at the same time checking out the information board that listed the current events taking place inside the hotel. One stood out: the St. John's Hospital Charity Ball. It was in the third-floor ballroom, and music from the live orchestra was already filtering down to the lobby. Ignoring the bank of elevators that was shuttling well-dressed, well-heeled couples up to the ballroom, I took the stairs, not wanting to be observed too quickly and realizing my legs needed the exercise since I had been mostly sitting on the series of long flights. When I got to the third floor, I followed the music and easily found the ballroom. I walked past the entrance slowly, glancing in, and sure enough, there they were just inside the doorway, looking and acting like the happy couple they were, greeting friends and supporters. My wife actually glanced back and looked right at me for a second, but I saw no recognition on her face. Why would there be? As far as she knew, I was still 7,000 miles away, fighting flies, sandstorms, and insurgents. Oh, and I also noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. When I got past the entrance, I went into the men's room and sat in a stall trying to plan my next moves. I was having a hard time grasping what I'd seen. I was so certain that my marriage with Laura was as solid as any marriage could be. How stupid I felt. Likely the whole time I was in Afghanistan, honoring my duty to my country, my loving wife was here at home dishonoring me, shattering our wedding vows. And what was wrong with all those people they were meeting and greeting? Didn't they know the woman that was hanging all over the councilman was married to an army officer serving overseas? I felt warm tears begin to run down my cheek, but wiped them away. There was no time for self-pity. I had a plan to formulate and carry out. At the moment, I had a much different enemy to fight than insurgents. I stayed in the bathroom stall for half an hour, giving the festivities an ample opportunity to get into full swing before I made my way through the ballroom door. Only the few people at the entrance paid any attention to me as I edged my body close to the wall and slowly walked to an area away from the bar and food tables to a vantage point behind a pillar where I had a clear view of most of the room. I didn't have a ticket to get into the event, but my uniform had more clout than any piece of paper. The young man taking tickets actually saluted me and said, "Welcome, sir," when I came through the door. The thought ran through my mind, it's too bad my wife and her lover don't have that kind of respect for me and the uniform I wear. It took me a few minutes to locate Laura and her date. They were dancing to a slow song, my wife's arms around his neck, her head against his chest, his hands resting possessively on her bottom. I managed to take several photos, but it took all my willpower to keep from rushing onto the floor and decking the guy and kicking his balls up into his kidneys. But that would only give me a little satisfaction and likely put me in jail. What I wanted, what I needed, was absolute proof of their affair, and then I would find an appropriate way to exact revenge for their total disrespect of me, our daughter, and the U.S. Army. They danced another dance, then arm in arm made their way to their table, sharing an intimate kiss and caress before they sat down. I captured it all in photos. I'd seen enough for the moment, so I made my way out to the hallway and found a seat where I could watch the ballroom doors and the elevators. As an Army officer, I had learned patience, and it paid off since another 2 hours went by before the event began to wind down and people made their way out the door and down the elevators. It wasn't long before my wife and the councilman made their exit and stood just outside the door talking. After a minute, they smiled at each other and turned together to the bank of elevators on their left, but instead of pushing the down button, they chose the one that would take them up. It was more than weird. I was only about 15 feet from them, sitting on a bench against the wall, wearing my camo fatigues and sunglasses, my name tag clearly displayed on the front of my uniform, looking totally out of place amid the tuxedos and ball gowns. And though many other couples noticed me and smiled or waved, my wife and her lover were so tuned into each other that they never gave me a glance. As the elevator door opened and they entered, holding hands, I watched to see that their car stopped on the 12th floor and waited to see if it went up again. It didn't, and in fact, it came back down to the 3rd floor where more couples were waiting to go down to the lobby. I made my way back down to the registration desk. I know this is an unusual request, but I have an important message for Councilman Bennett that I've been directed to deliver to him personally. I showed my government ID. I need to know what room he is in. The young lady at the desk looked worried. Sir, I'm really not supposed to divulge that information. Young lady, if it wasn't of the utmost urgent nature, do you really think I'd be here in my uniform? She nodded a few times and then checked her registry. He's in 1208. Thank you, Mississippi. I went to the elevators and got off on 11. The arrow pointing to rooms 1101 to 1120 went to the left. I walked past 1208, looked around to see if anyone else was in the hall, and placed my ear against the door. I could hear soft conversation and that's all. So I went further down the hall until I found the door that led to the stairs. I figured it might lock behind me, so I placed my handkerchief between the door and the latch. Then I checked my watch midnight. Sophia said her mother usually came home between 2 and 3, and once lately at 7, so I had a long wait, but again my army training and patience paid off. Through the window and the door, I could see room 1208, so I wouldn't miss them when they were done with their escapades. As I waited, I tried to keep my mind on the task at hand, but the truth is, I kept imagining her lover with his hands all over my wife. I could say my heart was broken, but it went far beyond that. I could feel my life spiraling down into a dark abyss where only pain, rejection, and humiliation were left. I knew I had to hold it together for my daughter's sake, but the knowledge that the woman I loved more than anything else on earth and trusted with every fiber of my being was at that very moment giving her body and soul, her love and passion, to another man overwhelmed me with a tidal wave of pain. Sometime around 1:30, I stepped out of the stairwell and pressed my ear against their door. I could hear very faint sounds. It sounded like moaning, and then I distinctly heard my wife hollering, "Yes, oh God, yes, do me, Mark, do me hard like that. You're so good." And then she screamed a scream I'd heard many times before when she had a climax with me. With tears running down my cheeks, I returned to the stairwell. I figured they would be wrapping things up before long and leaving their love nest in the next hour. At 2, I exited the stairwell for the last time and parked myself against the wall outside their room and waited for them to come out. My cell phone was set for video, and 15 minutes later, I heard the chain being removed from the door and the click of it opening. I began recording as they came out of their room. He had his arm protectively around her, and she was leaning against him, smiling. Laura looked freshly scrubbed and well pleased with herself. Henry Bennett looked pleased with himself. They kissed briefly and turned towards the elevators. "How's the screwing going, Laura?" "It looks like you two had a nice time," I said. Laura finally noticed me and suddenly looked like she was going to pass out. She put her hand to her heart and cried out, "Oh, John, no. Oh, God, please no. This can't be happening. You weren't supposed to see this." And she fell to her knees. It took her lover a few seconds more to realize who Laura was talking to. Then he said, "Hey man, this is really not what it looks like. She was just helping me with my new campaign." "Yeah," I said, "I can tell. I guess screwing her and killing her marriage is a new campaign tactic. I wonder how the voters are going to view that when the newspapers and TV stations find out you've been screwing an army officer's wife while he's in Afghanistan defending his country." "Wait a minute now. There was no sex involved. Tell him, Laura. Mr. Councilman, don't try to play me for a fool. I saw the kissing at my house and on the dance floor and heard the moaning and the do me, Mark, through the door. You've won my wife, she's all yours, and I'm sure that you're both proud of the fact that it all took place behind my back while I was dodging bullets 7,000 miles from here. Cowards, both of you. Even my daughter knows what you've been doing." Bennett stood there stunned, not knowing how to respond, and my wife knelt in a heap on the floor, sobbing. "Don't bother to come home tonight, Laura. Spend the night with your lover. I'm going to comfort our daughter, and Monday I'll file for divorce right after I inform the news media what kind of councilman is running this city. I have 30 days of emergency leave, so stay away till I go back. Then you can decide how to carry on with the rest of your life." "John, please," I heard my wife say. "Please what, Laura? Please forgive the fact that you've been screwing another man the whole time I've been deployed. Maybe longer? Please don't tell our daughter what you've been doing. She already knows, Laura. She's the one who told me to come home. I can't imagine why you've done what you've done, but you obviously have your reasons. I hope you two are in love because all you've got is each other now. I turned and walked towards the elevator. I'm sorry, John, she wailed. Sorry about what, Laura? Sorry I found out? Sorry I caught you screwing your new love? Sorry I screwed up your new life as the town's society queen? I watched the two of you from the second you left our house till you just now walked out of room 1208, and not once did I see a hint of you being sorry about anything. Quite the contrary, you looked as happy as any couple could possibly be with each other. Have a good Lafino, eat and die, both of you. And I stepped into the elevator and pressed the lobby button. When I got home, I found Sophia waiting for me. I could tell she'd been crying. She ran to me and threw her arms around me. Oh, Daddy, I've missed you so much. I'm so glad you're home. I missed you too, baby, more than I can tell you. Did you find them, Dad? Mom and the councilman? Yes, baby, I found them, and I'm sorry to say you were right. I don't think your mom will be coming home for a while. I don't care, Daddy. She's ignored me almost ever since you've been gone. Please take me with you when you go. Honey, I've got to go back to Afghanistan in a month, and as much as I wish you could be with me, you have to stay here. I can't stay with her, Dad. I hate her. No, Sophia, no matter what your mother has done to me in our marriage, she is still your mother. She doesn't love me, Dad, and she wrapped her arms around me. I held her as she cried. I finally convinced Sophia to go to bed and I secured the house, including setting the door chains just in case Laura decided to try to come home. I had no proof that Laura and her lover had used any of our bedrooms for their trysts, but I didn't want to take a chance, so I slept on the couch even though I wasn't sure they hadn't had sex there either. Sleep came only in spurts, 45 minutes here, half an hour there. I kept thinking about how I would handle the situation when Laura came to claim her clothes and personal items she'd need until I left in 30 days. I could have been a nice guy and taken a hotel room, leaving the house to her, but I just couldn't find it in my heart to be that nice. She was the one that destroyed our marriage, so she could at least suffer the minor inconvenience of being displaced from her home for a month. Besides, I'm certain her lover would be happy to put her up. They've been acting like a married couple, now they could live like one for a while, call it a trial marriage. Sophia and I both slept till noon, well, at least off and on until noon. I got up first and fixed coffee, then managed to make toast and scramble eggs for us. When Sophia finally came out of her room, we made small talk while we ate, and while we were rinsing the dishes and placing them in the dishwasher, the phone rang. Sophia and I looked at each other, then she answered it. Hello? Oh, hello, Mom. Yes, he's here. No, I don't think he wants to talk to you. Why would he? There was a pause while she listened. Mom, really? Dad and I both find it hard to believe you're sorry. It's not like you slipped up and kissed the guy once. You've been having an affair with your boyfriend ever since Dad deployed. Another long pause. Yes, I was the one that told Dad I needed him to come home. Another pause. Mom, you've ignored me for months. The only thing you've thought about, the only thing that's been important to you, is your affair with Henry Bennett. Another pause. Mom, please use your brain. Why would I tell Dad not to hurt Councilman Bennett? That evil man needs to be hurt and hurt badly for what he's done. Another pause. Sorry, Mom, not going to happen. Bye. Sophia turned to face me. She seems scared, Dad, like she doesn't understand what's going on. It's like she thinks her cheating on you is no big deal, and she can't figure out why you don't want her to come home. She doesn't understand? No big deal? Well, I promise that before I'm done with the two of them, she will understand what she's done and just how many people she's hurt by her behavior. Things were quiet around the house for most of the day. I tried to keep from thinking about what Laura might be doing with her lover, and Sophia tried to talk to me to keep my mind occupied. We did talk about what would be best for her when I went back to Afghanistan. I thought she'd be happy staying in her home, going to her school, being with her friends, but Sophia was afraid her friends would turn against her once they learned the terrible things her mother had done. I told her that real friends would stand beside her, but she wasn't convinced. We settled things with my assurance that I'd call my mom to see if Sophia could stay with her until my deployment ended, hopefully in another 5 or 6 months. Late in the afternoon, The phone rang again. It was Laura. I answered, but as soon as I heard Laura say, "John, oh John, please give me a chance to explain," I passed the phone to Sophia without saying a word. "What, Mom?" Sophia's voice was hard and cold, and she held the phone away from her ear so I could hear what her mother was saying. "Sophia, I need to talk to your dad." "I told you, Mom. He doesn't want to talk to you. But I need to explain to him." "Explain what, Mom? What can you possibly tell Dad that will explain what you and Henry Bennett have been doing for the past 6 months?" "It's not what you think, Sophia." "Yes, Mom, it is exactly what Dad and I think. You've turned your back on both of us in the worst way a woman can turn her back on her family. Shame on you, Mom. Shame on you." Sophia was hollering at her mother at this point. I could hear Laura crying. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Sophia." "Well, you did hurt people. Mom, people who loved you more than anything in the world, and you ripped the heart out of the one man who would die for you. I hope you're proud of yourself, Mom. I hope your sordid affair was worth it because it cost you your family, whatever that's worth to you. I just hope that one day you will wake up from this fantasy world you're living in and realize how selfish and stupid you have been." "Oh, please, Sophia. I love you and your dad." "Yeah, right, Mom, and pigs fly. If you love us, you have a really strange way of showing it, and I hate to think what you'd do if you hated us. Now, do you need something? Or can I go back to spending time with my dad?" There was the sound of Laura crying. "I need some things," she said quietly. "I need some clothes and I need my pills." That last part came out softly. "What pills would that be, Mom?" "Oh God, my pills, my birth control pills." "Oh sure, how stupid of me. Of course, you do. We couldn't have you carrying around the councilman's bastard child now, could we, Mom? That would really cramp your style, huh? Hard to neck on the dance floor when you're fat and pregnant. Well, they'll tell Dad, and I'm sure between the two of us, we can manage to pack your clothes and your birth control pills. And my makeup too, Sophia?" "Oh right, Mom, of course. As the town's society queen, you have to keep looking beautiful for His Royal Highness, the councilman, when you're in public. We'll make sure everything is out at the curb by 6 tonight, so you can drive by and pick it up. Have a nice night, Mom." And she hung the phone up and immediately began to cry. I put my arms around my daughter. "You were kind of hard on your mom, Sophia." "I know," she hiccuped. "I'm not proud of it, but I'm so angry. I couldn't help it. I just had to unload on her." "I know, baby, I know. We'll get through this, Sophia. We won't let them win." I gave her another hug and left her to round up the things her mother needed, and I went to my office. I needed to think, and there were a lot of things I had to do in the next few days. My army training kicked in, allowing me to methodically work through everything. I was an expert at putting together battle plans, and this was in all respects a battle. The usual minutiae was a no-brainer: find a good divorce lawyer, cancel our joint credit cards, get one credit card in my name and one in Sophia's, change the beneficiary to Sophia on my life insurance and retirement plans, and move half the money in the checking and savings accounts into accounts accessible only by Sophia and me. The more difficult tasks had to do with how to deal with Councilman Bennett. He had to be punished, and punished in a way that would make him out to be nothing more than a cowardly, wife-stealing scumbag. Part of the answer to that task came at 8 that evening in the form of a phone call, which I answered. Miller Residence, David Thompson. I didn't recognize the man's voice. "That's right, Captain David Thompson." "Captain Thompson, my name is Patrick Hayes. I'm a state representative here and a friend of Councilman Bennett. I was wondering if I could talk to you about the little misunderstanding involving you, your wife, and the councilman last night." "Little misunderstanding? Is that the city's official spin on my wife and Henry Bennett's sex scandal at the Royal Oaks Hotel until 2 this morning? Now, there's no need for that kind of language. We're just talking about a little late-night party between 2 consenting adults who likely had a little too much to drink and got carried away a bit. I'm sure if we just talk about it, we can straighten everything out." "Nothing to talk about, Roy. Councilman Bennett has been screwing my wife for the past 6 months while I've been in Afghanistan, and last night I caught them. I understand how troubling that is to you, Captain, but I'm hoping that we can find a way to work through this for everyone's sake." "Who's everyone, Roy?" "My only concern is for my daughter. The rest of you can go to hell." "I'm sorry you feel that way, Captain. The councilman is a powerful man in this community, and anything that might drag him down or make him look bad could result in some, shall we say, Negative things happening to whoever caused that to happen. Are you threatening me, Roy? Just telling it like it is, Captain. I personally would hate to see anything happen to you or anyone you love. Let me tell you something, Roy, and I strongly suggest you listen carefully. I've spent the last 6 months dealing with insurgents, meeting them at every turn and filling their lives with pain and suffering. Don't ever get the idea that I will back down from a fight with a tin-horn wife-stealing scumbag councilman of a town that barely rates a dot on the state map. You and your friend the councilman have never met an adversary like me. I don't give a damn how powerful you think you are. You are messing with the devil if you take me on. That's something my soon-to-be ex-wife forgot to mention to the councilman before she got involved with him. You might have money behind you, Roy, but I have every man and woman within 100 miles who ever served in the United States Armed Forces. See, we don't like men who take advantage of our soldiers' wives while they are fighting a war overseas. In fact, we loathe and detest them. Here's a little advice. Councilman Watson, don't mess with me. Remove yourself as far away from Councilman Bennett as you possibly can, or you just might find yourself burned by the fire that's about to pour down on your good friend, Councilman Bennett. Captain, please, let's be reasonable. Surely there's an amount of money, let's say a large amount of money, that could change hands and salve over the hurt feelings caused by this unfortunate incident. There aren't any hurt feelings, Roy. There's just cold, damning rage that a man like Henry Bennett could take advantage of a soldier's wife while he was fighting a war defending his country. And there isn't enough money in Fort Knox to make that go away. The only possible way for this to end to my satisfaction is to see Bennett and my wife feel the pain they've caused my daughter and me. And you have my permission to pass that message on to both of them. Tell them to get all the sex they can, as quickly as they can, because I promise that in a very short time, they may not feel like doing it anymore, at least not with each other. Captain, listen, I'm in a tight spot here. When word gets out about this, a lot of heads will roll. There must be some way we can make this go away. Well, if you were sincere about wanting that to happen, it can start by Bennett publicly admitting that he has been having an affair with an Army officer's wife while that officer was fighting a war in Afghanistan. Then he can follow that up by apologizing, admitting his mistake, and stepping down as councilman of this community and slinking off into obscurity. He can even claim the booby prize and take my cheating wife along with him. Nothing short of that will change my mind about publicly humiliating him and bringing him to his knees. Damn, you're really serious about this, aren't you? As serious as I have ever been about anything, Roy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to fix dinner for my daughter. And I hung up. Sophia came in from the garage. I put Mom's clothes and stuff out by the curb, and someone I didn't recognize in a black Mercedes stopped and picked it up. Well, for your mom's sake, let's hope that person was sent by Bennett, or there will be some mighty nice clothes for sale at Goodwill. I smiled at Sophia. I'm not sure what Goodwill would do with her birth control pills. Sophia just giggled. I packed her regular clothes, but couldn't get myself to include any of her fancy nightgowns. She has some pretty erotic teddies that I've never seen before. Just looking at them makes me sick. It's okay, Sophia. Thank you for handling that. She just nodded her head. You know you're going to have to eventually talk to her. I know I will when I'm ready and the time is right. The rest of the weekend went by without incident. Sophia helped me do laundry while I spent time working on my plan to bring down Councilman Bennett. Monday morning, I called a guy I knew at the local paper and arranged to meet him. Gregory Mason met me for coffee at a diner. He was a nice guy and a reputable reporter, and a few years back had been a sergeant in my National Guard company. What can I do for you, Captain? Jack, I've got some information for you, and what you do with it is up to you. It may sound self-serving to you, and in a way it is. As I'm sure you know, our Guard company has been deployed to Afghanistan for the past 6 months. Jack nodded. Well, what you may not know is that the whole time we've been away, Henry Bennett has been having a rather public affair with the wife of one of our soldiers. What's the soldier's name, John? I'd rather not say, Jack, unless it becomes absolutely necessary. I know if I was being cucked by a slimeball like Bennett, I wouldn't want the word to get out. I've seen the two of them together, very cozy. The scuttlebutt on the street is that she is separated from her husband and is going through a divorce. I guarantee you that's not the truth, Jack. In fact, the husband had no knowledge of the affair until a week ago. No separation except the war and no divorcee, at least not yet. I understand, Captain. but I can't make unfounded accusations against the councilman of this town and not get sued. Do you have any proof of the affair? I do. And I showed him the pictures and video ID taken. Of course, ID appreciated if the woman's face was blurred a little. Jack caught on immediately and showed some discomfort. Are you sure you want to go through with this, John? You know the truth will eventually come out. I shook my head sadly. I know, Jack, but I'll just have to deal with the shame. It's not like I was aware of it while it was going on. While Bennett was screwing my wife, I was 7,000 miles away in that miserable sandbox ducking bullets. The real shame is on Bennett. You're one of us, so you know what a breach of trust it is to take advantage of a soldier in harm's way by having an adulterous affair with his wife. Jack looked sad and nodded. Let me see what I can do. You're sure it's been going on the whole time you've been gone? Yeah. There are other people who've known about it the whole time, people who can't be identified for their protection. I transferred the photos and video to his cell phone, and we spent another 10 minutes talking about the 3 guys from our company that gave their all in the deployment. Then we shook hands and went our separate ways. My next step was to find a good divorce lawyer. I found a couple of names online, and after checking their references, chose one that looked promising. Anna Rogers, ESQ, had an office in the downtown district, and I made an appointment for that afternoon. When I got to the office, I was surprised to discover that Rachel stood for Anna Marie, a tomboyish-looking woman about 50 with graying hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Captain Thompson, what can I do for you? I liked the way she got right down to business. I need a divorce, and I can tell you up front, it's not going to be a pleasant one. She rolled her eyes at me. There's no such thing as a pleasant divorce, Captain, but it'll play along. Why won't your divorce be pleasant? Because while I've been in Afghanistan the last 6 months, the councilman of this little town has been betting my wife on a regular basis. Her eyes flew open, and she dropped the pen she was holding. You mean Bennett? I nodded. Yes. Captain, you have my undivided attention. For the next half hour, I told her everything while she took notes, stopping me occasionally for clarification or to ask a question. So your daughter, Sophia, is she an only child and she's 14? How does she feel about what's going on? She hates it. It's tearing her up. She doesn't want to stay with her mother when I go back to Afghanistan. Well, she's old enough that the court will take her desires into consideration. But since she can't go to war with you, is there another option besides your wife? My mom. They'll call her to see if she'll take Sophia until my deployment is up in 6 months. I'm sure she'd love to have her granddaughter stay with her for a while. We talked for the better part of an hour. I gave her the information about our finances, and she told me I need to talk with my wife to see if there was any possible way we could get past what had happened. I told her if she had seen the look in their eyes when they were together, she would understand why there was no way Laura and I could ever put this behind us, and I wanted the papers ready to serve as soon as possible. Another week went by. This time, Laura only called the house 5 times to talk to me. Each time, I told her I would let her know where, and went and cut the conversation short. On Friday, I heard from my attorney that the divorce papers were ready to be served. She just needed to know where. I told her I'd invite Laura to my home the following Monday at 2 while Sophia was in school, and she could be served at that time. I called Laura's cell and told her I'd like to meet with her Monday at 2 at the house. She tried to keep me online to begin her obviously rehearsed explanation for her behavior, but I cut her off, telling her that she would have all the time she needed for explanations when we met on Monday. Laura arrived a few minutes before 2, and we sat down at the kitchen table. When I saw her, my heart did flips. She looked so beautiful. I guess having an affair with Bennett had been good for her. Coffee? No, just water, please. I know you want to have the opportunity to tell me some things, and I will give you that opportunity. Thank you, John. I don't want you to get caught off guard, though. So I do need to tell you before you begin that in a little while, someone will show up and serve you with divorce papers. Her face lost all its color. Why, John? I don't want that. I didn't want you to have an 8-month affair with Henry Bennett either. So I guess neither one of us gets our way. John, please, if you'll just hear me out, you'll see why this happened and how we can get around it. Go ahead. Talk. You know I worked on Mark's election campaign. The whole time, we were thrown together at functions and on precinct walks, and we got to be friends. After you were deployed, I was lonely and depressed, and Mark bought me lunch and let me use him for a sounding board. He really helped me get through the pain of missing you. Then one night, He asked me to attend a dinner event with him. He said there would be a number of very influential couples on hand and that it might be best if I used my maiden name and left my wedding rings at home just to keep rumors from getting started. I didn't think about it at the time, but now I see where taking my rings off was a mistake. We met so many people that night, and all of them ended up seeing me as a single woman. When did the sex start? She looked down at her hands. Not right away, though we did dance closely that night, and when he took me home, he kissed me goodnight. And you let him. I was lonely, John, and I just spent a romantic night with a handsome man who had stature in the community and who treated me like a princess. Treated you like a princess while your husband was fighting a war. And that gave you the right to disrespect me? No, it didn't, but I was confused. You were so far away and I missed you so much and I don't know. He just made me feel good. I nodded and she went on. We went to dinner a couple of times a week after that, and to more and more events. I was starting to have such a good time with him, and it made me miss you less. The sex? She looked down at her hands again. You'd been gone a month. Mark and I were going out 2 or 3 times a week. One night after a romantic dinner, he asked me to go home with him. And you did. She nodded sadly. And I did. I felt horrible afterward. I actually got sick to my stomach and made him take me home. I told him I couldn't see him anymore, that I loved my husband and I couldn't believe that I'd been unfaithful to you while you were fighting a war. But you changed your mind again. She nodded sadly. Mark left me alone for several days. Then he called me and told me how much he missed me. He said he wanted to see me again, but just as friends. He promised he would never put me in a compromising position again, that he too felt bad about what we had done. So you saw him again? Yes. That week, he took me to a party at one of his friends' homes on the Bluffs. It was an intimate party with just 5 or 6 couples, all very important people. Sometime during the evening, the wife of a prominent doctor asked me how I'd managed to capture the heart of the town's most eligible bachelor. She caught me off guard and I couldn't think of a plausible answer, so I just told her that I was separated from my husband and that we were getting a divorce. In a town this size, that bit of information spread like wildfire and I felt trapped. Sophia was spending the weekend with some friends at a horse camp, and I ended up spending the weekend with Mark at his home, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yes, I am heartbroken that I hurt you and Sophia, John. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and I'd give anything to undo it. But you can't. No, I can't. Do you love him? I don't know if I love him. I like him a lot. We have so much fun together. Yes, I remember. Sex can be wonderful fun. Is he a better lover than me? No. Oh, I don't know. It's different. Have you been staying with him since I caught you at the hotel? Yes. And still having sex with him? Yes. Are you going to marry him? I don't know. We've talked about it. The doorbell rang. I think that's for you, Laura. She got up and slowly walked to the door. Are you Laura Miller? She nodded yes and was handed a manila envelope. You've been served. For the longest time, Laura just stood there, looking out the door, holding the envelope in her hands. When she finally closed the door and turned around, I could see she was crying. So it's really over between us, John? Yes, Laura, it's really over. You made sure of that. But I love you so much. No, you loved the life we had, but you threw it away. Now you get to go find another life. What about Sophia? She wants to go stay with my mom till my deployment ends. Laura finally broke into sobs. Oh God, what have I done? The following day, there was a picture on the front page of the local newspaper with a banner headline that read, "Who is the mystery married woman coming out of a hotel room with Councilman Bennett?" Underneath the photograph of Laura and the councilman kissing as they exited room 1208 was the caption, "Does her army husband serving in Afghanistan know what's going on?" The accompanying story gave details about the charity event the two were attending together, and that hotel records clearly showed the councilman had booked the room for the night, and that the couple were photographed leaving that room at 2 in the morning. The story also said that there had been unsubstantiated rumors that the two had been meeting regularly for the past 6 months while the woman's husband was deployed in Afghanistan. There was more to the article, with the newspaper stating that it was their editorial right to bring the story to light due to the stature of the man involved and the nature of the offense against a soldier stationed in harm's way. The shit hit the fan within minutes of the story hitting people's doorsteps. The councilman's office went into damage control, claiming that the story was a complete fabrication, that Councilman Bennett would never do anything to jeopardize anyone's marriage, let alone the marriage of a soldier serving his country overseas. They went on to state that the photograph was obviously a fake, and that some unnamed sinister individuals were out to get the councilman, and that he would be holding a press conference later that afternoon to set the record straight. It all sounded good, but unfortunately, over the past 6 months, too many people had seen Bennett and Laura together. They had never been careful about showing their affection for each other in public, so one by one, as friends and supporters began to distance themselves from him, several people anonymously phoned the newspaper to confess they knew for a fact that the couple had been having an affair because they'd witnessed it on more than one occasion, and they expressed outrage to discover that the woman's husband was deployed in the army while the affair was taking place. That afternoon, Councilman Bennett held his news conference, but none of his friends on the city council stood with him. In fact, the only people backing him up were his staff, and even half of them were strangely missing. The newspaper and TV stations were there, though, and they recorded the whole thing as Bennett extolled his horror at being accused of such an unthinkable thing. He assured everyone that he and the woman in question were merely acquaintances and had never done anything to bring shame on them or the woman's husband. Halfway through his little speech, Laura pushed her way through the onlookers and went to the microphone and, to Bennett's horror, told everyone, "My name is Laura Miller. I am the wife of Army Captain David Thompson, and for the past 6 months, I have been having an affair with Councilman Bennett." At that point, Bennett tried to shove her out of the way, claiming, "I don't know this woman, she's lying." "Yes, you do know me, you son of a bitch, and it's time we both admitted what rotten shits we really are. I am so ashamed of what I've done to my husband that I want to die, but I will not stand here and let you lie about it." She turned to face Bennett, who by now had turned red with rage and embarrassment. "Mark, you knew I was married and that my husband was in Afghanistan, and still you pursued me, and I was such an idiot that I listened to you. And now I have embarrassed and lost the only man who has ever loved me." Tears were streaming down her face. "I am so ashamed and heartbroken, and I will be sorry for the rest of my life." At that point, Laura looked directly into the TV cameras and said, "I'm sorry, John. I love you." And she left through the crowd while the reporters all started barking questions at the councilman, who turned and stormed back into City Hall. I have to admit that having the world hear all that damaged my already fragile ego, but I knew the chance I was taking when I went to Gregory Mason, my newspaper contact. The next day, when the president of the city council announced that Bennett had resigned from office and that the council would run the city until such time as a new councilman could be elected, I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a deep, empty loneliness. I missed my wife more than I ever imagined possible. My reporter friend called me that afternoon to tell me that Bennett had packed up and left town, leaving no forwarding address, and that my soon-to-be ex-wife hadn't gone with him. I spent as much time with my daughter as possible in my remaining leave. In the last week, I allowed Laura to move back into the house. Sophia and I went to my mother's home, 60 miles away, where I enrolled her in school, promising that I'd be back to get her as soon as my deployment was over. The next week, I was on a plane back to Afghanistan, my heart filled with a burning anger that I planned on taking out on the enemy that was lurking in the desert. What happened to Laura? A few weeks later, she moved in with Bennett, and the two have left town. Did John come back from Afghanistan? Yes, but he was critically injured, and his daughter helped him get back on his feet. He lost one of his legs in an ambush. He is currently working as a design specialist for a large tech company. He lives with his daughter and occasionally speaks about the challenges that soldiers face who have been on duty outside the country. Thanks for watching. What would you do if you were in David's situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories.
The signs, were they there or not? I guess they were, but I didn't recognize them or expect to see them. Maybe it was finding one clue at a time that didn't set off alarms. There wasn't anything that made me think something was wrong. Even finding 2 or 3 clues didn't wake me up. I was just another loving, caring husband and father. Since the signs were discovered innocently and by chance over time, they weren't pieced together until that sad night. Our lives together were more or less like every other married couple. We had our good times and bad, but there wasn't any major problem that came to light. My wife never told me there was an issue. She always said she'd speak up if she had a problem. No, there was nothing wrong with our relationship, nothing wrong with our marriage, and nothing wrong with my wifey, at least nothing I saw. Damn it, call me dumb, call me unobservant, or too trusting, but I didn't see anything until it hit me right in the jaw. But now, there were many things wrong, and as I put them all together, I knew we had a major problem, the most major problem a couple could have, another person in our lives. I was going to confront her tonight when she got home. I was going to confront my wife of 10 years with the proof of her infidelity. I was sure this could only go badly, and I was scared that what I was thinking and finding was all true. Honestly, I loved her so much that I was dying inside, dreading what would happen when we talked. But I had no choice. I had to ask her what was going on and then wait for the hammer to fall. Maybe she'd confess and beg me to stay. God, I hoped so, because I loved her more than life itself, and I'd most likely forgive her as long as it stopped. Let me back up and start from the beginning. The first thing I noticed was the lack of sex. We went from 2 or 3 times a week to 2 or 3 times a month. This had been going on for about 4 months. She told me she was just tired and that work had been extremely hard, with long hours. I knew she was working more. Hell, we hadn't had a week alone for the past month because she was always getting paged at the clinic. But it wasn't just the sex, it was the feeling of love and compassion that was missing. She told me I was out of my mind and that it was my imagination. When we did have sex, it was usually controlled by her and quicker than before. Now, I'm no spicy starmost husband's errant, but over the past 10 years, we used to make love for at least an hour, maybe 2. Now, it seemed like 20 minutes was all she was willing to give me. Then, she'd work hard to make me finish as quickly as I could. I used to hold her and continue to make love to her for another half hour after intercourse, and sometimes that would lead us to do it again. Now, when I rolled off her, she'd get up immediately and go to the bathroom. I'd hear her cleaning herself completely. When she got back into bed, she'd lay there with her back to me. Things like that showed me she didn't have the affection she once had for me. So, I tried harder, only to be rebuffed again and again. Lately, there's been no sex at all for maybe 3 weeks. The second clue was her temperament. She got pissed off at me much faster. Her kidding and kindness toward everyone, even the kids, were greatly reduced. Sarah was much quicker to lose her temper now than ever before. The once nice and gentle woman had changed almost overnight into someone I didn't recognize. Sometimes, her attitude toward me was along the lines of, "Leave me alone," or, "I guess I have to put up with you again today." She'd answer me with a simple, "What?" or "What now?" or "I don't feel like it tonight," etc. That brings me to the fateful night when it all went to hell. I was home on time from work, and being Friday night, I knew we'd be going out to dinner like we usually did on the weekends. She worked long hours, and neither of us felt like messing with food or dishes. As usual on the weekends, she'd sent the kids to her mom's or my folks. Sometimes, it was good, it gave us time to be together, but now, it only gave her a chance to yell and be pissed off at me with no kids around to keep her courteous. She'd really let me have it. So, I tried extra things like flowers and gifts. I had sent her flowers today. I saw them in the living room as I came into the house, undoing my tie. I said, "Babe, I'm home. Are we going out to dinner tonight?" She said, "Come upstairs, John. Come I want you to see my new outfit." "Yes, we're going." She seemed okay, at least her voice didn't have vinegar in it. So far, so good. I'd be as nice as I could, and maybe we could have a nice time together. I called back, "Right? They'll be right up." I thought to myself, another new outfit? Christ, it's the 5th one this month. But no sex and bad moods from working too much, and new outfits alone don't mean anything to a husband. I mean, hell, I was raised to believe that women had to have new things to wear all the time, and so I really didn't care if my wife bought new things. The world was made so women would shop, spend money, and buy stuff. It's what makes the world go round, right? It especially didn't mean my wife was cheating on me. When I arrived in the doorway of our bedroom, Sarah was standing there, modeling an extremely short dress barely covering her, but cheeks and it was tight. I mean, anyone could see she didn't have a thing on under it. Dark blue in color, the dress emphasized her lovely body. Hell, that was like saying the Super Bowl was just another football game. The first thing that came to mind was that she looked single, 26, and was going out clubbing with her girlfriends. I smiled and said, "Is that it?" She smiled back and said, "Yep. How do I look, John?" Now, Sarah looks good when she gets up in the morning after a hard night. So, here she was with her hair done, makeup on, and standing as she was, slipping on her left high heel. As she did, she was bending backwards, arching her body, and pushing her hips out a little as she bent her knee up to adjust the shoe. She looked hotter than the sand on the beaches of Los Angeles in August. Without thinking, I said, "Well, where are you going out with the girls, clubbing? You look like a 24-year-old babe going out and looking to get some hot action." I was thinking she looked like the girl you see in every bar and dance hall, the one who stands out and looks fantastic. But after saying what I did to her, I thought to myself, oh, did that just come out of my mouth? Did I say that? I meant it both as a compliment and like I was kidding her. At age 34, after 2 kids, she still looked like she did before the kids, in her early 20s. But Sarah took it completely wrong and told me there were lots of men out there who'd think she was closer to 24 than 34, and I sure didn't appreciate all the work it took for her to stay that way. She was actually mad just like that. She jumped on me. Her attitude towards me was certainly different. I said, "Wait, Sarah, you're getting upset for nothing. You asked me, and I told you what I felt. You look great, baby. It's just that you don't usually wear those tight, short dresses. It's not that you can't wear the mitts, that you haven't had one on in years." She said, "Well, get used to it, John, because I've decided to dress how I feel, and I feel like I'm 24. Thanks a hell of a loadie, was sure you'd love to see me get all dressed up for tonight. I've worked hard to get my stomach back down to size 22 again, the same size I was in college. But no, of course not you. You think I look too old or too fat or something, and as usual, you make fun of me." I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. I was kidding with you. You look super, and your body looks as good now as it ever has, maybe even better. But I just think that dress is a little too—" I was looking for the right choice of words, short and tight. She said it for me, "Too sexy for an old married woman to wear out to eat dinner?" Well, I'm not an old married woman, and I love the way I look. People at work told me I look fantastic. I said, "The people at work, you wore that to work? Jesus, Sarah." She put her hands on her hips and looked at me like I was the dumbest man on the face of the earth. Hands on her hips made the dress rise up another inch. Hell, it seemed that every movement she made caused the dress to rise up a little more, and it didn't go back down either unless she pulled it down. Of course not, are you crazy? I bought it during lunch and then put it on and showed everyone just before I left to come home. I did wear it home, and you know what? Not one person that saw me in it told me it wasn't a great outfit, or that I didn't look great in it. Then my husband comes home and just criticizes it in me. I said, "The dress does look great on you, Sarah. If you were going clubbing and partying with the girls, looking for SX and single again, then I'd say if I saw you out, I'd think, wow, you're dressed for SX. I know if I was a guy in a club, it would get my full attention if you walked past me." She said, "How dare you say I look like I'm dressed for SX? And you might as well not even think about that. You won't be getting any SX from the old married woman for quite some time. In fact, you have a good idea. Maybe you'll just call Emma, and we'll go clubbing since I'm dressed for SX." Emma was the single woman with a child that Sarah went out with once every other week or soda shop, see movies, or have dinner, but she was always home by 11:00 p.m., so no problem, right? They were like sisters. Then she said, "Yes, maybe I should go clubbing. Emma has asked me to do that with her before when we go out, but since she's single and I'm not, I didn't go. Maybe I need a younger man to appreciate me, and I bet I could get some nice young guy to dance with me in this outfit." She ran her hands down the dress, straightening it and making sure I saw how it accentuated her body. Then she continued, "Maybe you'll meet a young man who appreciates the way I look, the time it takes to stay this way, and the effort I make to look like this. Yes, someone who cares about how I've taken care of myself. Maybe a guy who'd love to see me dressed this way and would hold me tight while we danced." "You sure don't," I said. "What? I'm always telling you how good you look and how beautiful you are. I don't know where you get off saying these things." I had been married long enough to know that whatever else I said from here on would only piss her off more. But I'm a man, damn it, and as dumb as I am, I couldn't let it drop. Finally, after she stopped raving at me for what seemed like 5 minutes, I held up my hand. I walked right up to her and looked her in the eyes. I realized that the heels she had on made her just about the same height as me now. I said, "Wait a second." Sarah backed the truck up. "You call me up to the bedroom as soon as I walk into the house. I've seen, God knows, how many new outfits these last 4 months on you. They all looked great. Did you hear me?" I said great. I spelled it out. "Then you asked me what I think of this one. It's the sighest of all of them so far. Then, when I try and kid with you about it, you get pissed off instantly. You get pissed off. Then, when I try to explain I was kidding, you threaten me with going out and picking up some young guy dressed in that outfit that oozes SX, and you expect me to stand here and listen to you beat the hell out of me because I suggested only after you asked that the dress might be a little too short and too tight for you, a wife and mother of 2, who looks great anyway, but maybe shouldn't be trying to look 20 again, at least not all the time. What's wrong with this picture?" You asked. I answer it seems I can't win either way here. She just looked at me and sighed as she adjusted her stockings, and I knew she wasn't wearing anything under the dress now for Sereno bra. No panties, only the thigh-high stockings. I said, "Look, Sarah, you look fantastic, and you don't need a dress like that to prove it. As long as we're together, you can wear anything you want, but I just don't want you wearing something that tight, that short, out with Emma. Or when I'm not with you, it could only bring trouble. But let's not fight about it. Come on, I just got home from work, and I want the weekend to go well for us. It's the first one in a while where you haven't had something to do or been called away to work." She said, "Oh, and I guess that's my fault. It's my fault that some drunk runs into a phone pole and I get called because there's an emergency at the clinic and we try to save him. I get paid. It's my job, just like yours. I get paged and have to go in. I'm not going to apologize to you for that. You'll have to deal with it. You knew it would happen when I took the promotion. You sure don't fight about the extra money coming in, and don't ever tell me I can't wear something when I go out, because I'll wear it just for spite." I said, "Extra money? I bet you've spent more than you bring in with all these new clothes. But it's not the money, babe. It's not that at all. Sarah, it's every time we get to go out alone, you get called away, and we don't get to spend an evening alone together. It's like they have a camera here, and know when we might be going to have a good time. When they see that, they call you. God knows our SX life is almost non-existent these past 4 months." She didn't reply. She just looked in the mirror and turned this way and that, smiling. She didn't say anything. So I said, "Come on, let's go to dinner as soon as I shower." She turned and walked out of the room. I watched her walk past me and down the hallway in the dress. I stood there and said to myself, "Welcome home. What the hell happened? Okay, so new clothes, a wife who pounces on her husband with the slightest wrong word, and no SX does make for a cheating wife. Sure, I didn't like the changes, and I didn't like her flaunting her body in that dress, but as long as she was with me, I gave in and didn't say anything else. But cheating? It didn't even cross my brain. We went to dinner that night, and she wore the dress, much to my disapproval, but I didn't say anything. I'm sure the dinner would have been good, but I had lost most of my appetite. The 2 vodkas I had before dinner helped me mellow a little and get past the crude looks from the men and the disapproval from the women. I had to admit, Sarah looked incredible. I just didn't like her wearing it if we weren't together, and it really didn't fit with the restaurant or what we were doing. But as long as she only wore it when she was with me, then I was okay with it, as okay as I could be. It didn't cross my mind that she could wear it without me anytime she wanted. She sure looked like she was out hunting for a man or men. The outfit almost screamed, "I want to get drilled hard by someone, anyone." And while it looked fantastic on her, I felt uncomfortable with the way most of the men there looked at her. The conversation wasn't much, and as bad and as hard as I tried to talk about things, I got one word or one sentence answers. She never even tried to keep the conversation going. Finally, I just sat there and drank my drink. The dinner arrived, and I had taken maybe 2 bites when, damn, her cell phone rang. She looked at the number and ignored it. Then, 10 minutes later, it rang again. She looked at the phone and me, and still didn't answer it. She looked at the number again, and then told me it was work, and she'd call them back later. I felt guilty and said, "Well, maybe it's an emergency, babe. Maybe you should take it." She said, "Maybe you're right." She got up from the table, giving half the guys in the place a nice long view up her thighs as she swung her legs out of the booth. The dress had ridden up her body just like it was supposed to do. It was so short now that I got a flash of the tops of her thigh-high stockings under it. I knew the guys in front of our booth saw much more. Then, without pulling the dress down any at all, she walked away toward the ladies' room. I swear I could see the bottoms of her butt cheeks as she walked. I watched her walk and placed the phone next to her ear and start talking. She was gone maybe 15 minutes. When she came back, I asked if everything was okay, and she sighed and said, "No, but look, I have to go. I have to leave now. They want me to assist with an emergency operation. I'm glad I did take the call. It's a little girl who fell, and we have to relieve the pressure in her head. Look, I'm sorry. I have to go." I said, "We can try again tomorrow, okay? I know you have to go, so go." She looked at me for a few seconds. Damn, she looked so beautiful in that dress. I said, "Are you going home to change first?" She said, "No, we'll get one of those green doctor's outfits at the clinic. Look, this could take quite a while. I'm sure it's a major operation. I gotta run. We'll get a snack before I get to work." She kissed me goodbye, sliding her lips across mine, and she walked out as all the men watched her. As she stood on the corner, she caught a cab and was gone. I sat there wondering what the folks at the clinic were going to say when she came in and they saw how she was dressed. Then I remembered she had already shown them the dress. I ate and went home with Sarah's dinner in a box, just in case she was hungry when she got home. I saw the light on the answering machine blinking and pressed play. A man's voice came on and said, "Sarah, this is James. Can you break free? I need you tonight. Please call me as soon as you get this message. It's an emergency." I figured they called her at home first, and then not reaching her, they called her cell phone while I was there. I checked and deleted the other messages still on the machine. There were 4 of them from James. But new SX clothes, no SX, a tense wife who goes nuclear on her husband for the slightest little thing, and a bunch of messages from the same guy. All of these don't make for a cheating wife, at least in my little brain. It didn't register that way. I dialed the number, and it rang and rang before someone picked it up. A voice said, "Sarah, are you on your way yet?" I said, "This is Sarah's husband, and yes, she is on the way." "Who is this, please?" The voice said, "This is Dr. James Martini. Work with Sarah at the clinic. She told me she was going to leave you at the restaurant 26 minutes ago. Where is she?" I told him she was on her way, and then asked him why he had been calling here so much. He got uptight quickly and said, "Look, buddy, I call her when I want her. I call her when I need her here to help me. It's her job, okay?" And he hung up, slamming the phone down in my ear. I said, "Asshole," to no one. Add another one to the growing list. New SX clothes. No SX? Pissed off all the time at me. Multiple phone calls from the same guy who said he needed her and wanted her. There was nothing about work, and then the guy gets nasty with me when I ask him a simple question about the number of calls from him. I knew later that Sarah would go absolutely nuts on me for even asking him anything, but all that doesn't mean crap. It sure doesn't mean my wife is cheating on me. But I did say, God, what a life. So, I sat down and waited for her to come home. I turned on the TV, but there was nothing on I really wanted to watch. So I got up and washed up the dishes in the sink. Then I went into the bedroom and got the laundry. I figured I'd wash the clothes while I waited for her to come home. We both washed the clothes and shared the things that needed to be done, but I seemed to be doing more of them lately while she was out. But they needed to be done. No, I'm not the husband type. I just believe in helping out with things since we both worked for a living. As I finished up in our bathroom, I was closing the hamper when I saw a bra behind the hamper. When I bent over to get it, I could tell something was spilled on it. The bra was a lacy light blue, but there was something caked on it. It was a white, creamy-colored substance between the cups and over one of them. Food was my first reaction to seeing it, but then I picked at it and touched a fingertip to my mouth, spitting it out. I could taste its bitterness, but had no idea what the hell it was. As I sorted the clothes, I noticed a bunch of new colored underwear, maybe from Victoria's Secret or Fredericks of Hollywood, already in the washer. She must have forgotten to dry them. Sarah had about a dozen new undergarments, including thongs, which she had never worn before. As far as I knew, let's say she never wore them for me. There were bras I had never seen before, and they did more than, shall we say, push up, lift, or separate her breasts. Some were just a sort of half bra, and I realized that if she wore these, she was half exposed. And there were 2 that might as well not have been bras at all. They were that transparent and sheer. I began to separate the dirty clothes, the bleach items, from the other color items, That's when I noticed a pair of tan panties hiding inside a pair of slacks. It looked like she took them off quickly and at the same time. I picked up the slacks and pulled the panties out of the inside of the slacks. I was about to throw them with the other clothes when I stopped. They were stained too, with the same white stuff. It was caked and stuck on like dried food. I had to really flake it off with my fingernail. The panties had it all between the leg open. I was puzzled as I looked at them. I said, "Wait a minute. Wait just a minute." It was semen. Jesus Christ. There was cum on one of the new SX bras and in her panties. I was yelling to no one. "What the hell, Sarah?" As I looked closer at the dirty clothes, I found nothing else, so I took the stained panties and bra and put them in a plastic bag to show my wife. I said, "Sarah, you have some explaining to do." I went into the kitchen and got a beer. My brain was racing now, reviewing all the things that had been going on with Sarah and me. I wrote them down. Let's see, new SX clothes, nasty attitude toward me, and no SX, phone calls from the same guy, and now new underwear with semen stains on some of them. Does this mean she's cheating? Hell yes. But I need more information. I called the clinic and asked for Sarah. The lady told me, "I think she's gone, left around 9:00 p.m. Hold on a minute." I said, 9:00 p.m.? That was an hour ago. She should be here now, or very soon. There was no one on the other end. He was on hold. When the lady came back, she said, "Yes, sir. She left at 9:00 p.m., but she was taking a couple of people home. They were going to be stopping off for a drink and some dinner first. She said if her husband called to tell him she'd be late and not to wait up." Is this he? I told the lady yes and thanked her. Knowing how Sarah was dressed made me very upset. She should have known better than to wear that type of outfit if she was on call. This would be the 5th weekend in 2 months that something like this had happened. Would be someplace, and she'd get paged and have to leave. I was mad as hell now and decided to check out the rest of Sarah's things. The panties and bra I was going to take to a lab and have a friend run a test to see what was on them for sure. And if it was semen, I'd ask him to also run a DNA test for me. Again, I added the late dinner with some friends to the ever-growing list of things we'd talk about later on. Now, to check out Sarah's stuff first, the closet where her clothes were hanging. Sarah had the big closet. It was a walk-in. I went over her things and found 2 blouses that had buttons off and holes where the buttons used to be. I could only imagine the buttons were ripped off. Maybe Dr. James did that when he was in a hurry to open it up and couldn't wait for her to get undressed. I found 1 pair of slacks ripped in the back on the seam around her hips. There were a couple of other items that were ripped. It was like someone was trying to get them off too fast, or they were being pulled and stretched. But the thing that really was the icing on the cake for me were the new things in the back of the closet. When I took the last one of the low-cut outfits out and held it up, I smelled something sweet. Placing it to my nose, I inhaled deeply and knew what it was, the odor of aftershave cologne. And it wasn't mine. All these clothes were new and had been worn maybe once. They were very erotic looking, just like the dress she had on tonight. There were a few other things that had different odors on them, none that I recognized. There was a group of clothes I had never seen before in plastic bags from the store where she had purchased them, or fresh from the cleaners. They still had sales slips or cleaning tags on them. As I checked the cleaning bags, I could see they were taken in on either Saturday mornings or Monday afternoons, and they were picked up on Wednesdays. I recorded the information and checked it with the dates as far as I could remember when Sarah was paged while we were out. They were the same time periods, or they coincided with the time periods when Sarah was out with her girlfriend Emma. 3 months worth of cleaning and new clothes that synchronized with her being paged by her new boss, or since she had been going out with Emma. More to talk about. I said. I left the clothes and took a shot, then checked the calendar on the PC, which belonged to Sarah. Not much to go on. The letters PM and EM, or meet Emma on different dates for the past 4 months, was all that was there. What the hell was I thinking? If she was cheating, she sure wouldn't leave that sort of information around on her PC. But EM could indicate Dr. James Martin. The dates were right. There was nothing else but deleted emails from Anderson Advisors, but I didn't know anyone who worked there. Emma? I tried to get into the actual email, but they had password protection on them. That made me wonder why so much security. I realized I would have to be as clever, or more so, than she was in order to get all the proof I wanted. I wanted to be 100% certain. Plus, I still didn't have any hard proof that my wife was actually cheating on me. I guess my married brain wasn't working as quickly as my business brain. Plus, it was hard to believe that my wife, the mother of my 2 kids, was screwing around with a guy named James. And Pimu, or what the hell was PM? I went to the kitchen and got another beer, then sat on the steps that led to the garage. Let's see, I thought. New clothes and underwear. Attitude towards husband changed drastically. Phone calls from the same guy. Nasty voice and hanging up. Panties and bra stained with something that looked very much like semen. Aftershave on a blouse that didn't belong to me. Was that what I had gathered so far as proof? Yes. Was it enough to confront her? I didn't know. Was it enough to go see a lawyer? Yes. Did I want that? I didn't know. I was frustrated, mad, and starting to get very sad. Did this mean my wife was cheating on me? I was getting sicker to my stomach as the clues built and built towards a yes answer. Then, as I emptied the trash out of the bathroom and saw 2 empty douche bottles, it looked like she had used 2 of them in a short period of time since the trash had been emptied last time maybe 2 weeks ago. I held on to them and put them in the same place I had all the other things. I took the trash out, dumped it into the big trash bin in the garage. As I dumped it, I saw a pack of matches from the Silver Owl pub already in the trash can. There was a bright pink flamingo on the cover, which was all black. I knew I had never been to that place, so they must have come from Sarah. Looking further now at the bills and receipts file, I found the following information. There were credit card statements and receipts showing charges for a hotel. They must have stayed there on the night. She said she was going to the movies with Emma. Funny, looks like she never did go out with Emma. She was just a cover, and I knew Emma. Shed cover for her best friend, I was sure of that. Then, as I was about to close the desk, I saw a piece of paper on the bottom of the file. It was a gas receipt from a station out by that hotel I had a receipt for. That was proof she was out there, no doubt that she had spent more than one time with him now. But there were receipts for only 2 or 3 nights. If she had been cheating on me for 4 months, where did she go the rest of the time? Unknown yet. While I was out in the garage, I decided to check Sarah's car too. I looked under all the seats and in the dashboard, nothing. Then I popped the hood and trunk. As I was checking out the trunk, I dropped my damn flashlight, and it rolled to the back of the trunk and stayed there. Of course, it was that sort of night. I had to actually climb into the trunk about halfway to get it back out. I bumped my head, yelled some nasty words, and that's when I noticed something being held on the bottom of a speaker under the back window. It was one of those magnet boxes you use in a car to hold a spare key, you know. It gets hidden under the fender or bumper, and if you lock your keys in the car, you can get that one to open the door. But this one was up under the trunk and back window, hidden completely unless you knew it was there. When I tried the key, it didn't open any door or trunk to Sarah's car. I took it and decided I'd make a copy of it and put it back in her car. As I looked closer at the match pack and opened it, I saw there was a map on the inside showing the location out on Parkway 10 and Highway 5. I knew of a place called the Pink Elephant out that way. It was a strip club, an expensive strip club. I knew I would have to make sure we had a babysitter the next time Sarah went out with Emma so I could follow her. And I'd have to check out the Silver Owl pub one day too. I decided to call my friend, Tim, who had contacts that could bug phones, PCs, and break into password-protected files. I went back in and took a thumb drive, copied the emails I couldn't open, and then packed all the things I had found in a bag and hid them in my car. I went back and took 2 of the outfits that were ripped or torn, or that had a button off. There were more than I first realized. There was a skirt that had a large rip at the top and a button missing that held it together. There was a sweater, which was very soft. It was made of lamb's wool, expensive and new, and I hadn't seen it before. It looked like the neck had been stretched badly. There was a small rip on the sweater too. It started where the V ended, not much, just a little rip, but I took it and placed it with the rest of the things I had accumulated. Then I waited for my wife to come home. I watched TV and must have fallen asleep until the front door opened, and in walked my lovely wife, with her skirt riding high on her hips. She smiled at me and said, "You shouldn't have waited up, John. It's late. Almost 1:00 a.m. I'm going to bed. They'll talk with you in the morning. I'm really beat." I said, "James called earlier, but I guess you saw him." She stopped and turned toward me. She looked mad now and said, "Oh yes. What the hell were you thinking? Asking my boss a bunch of dumb questions? Don't do that again." Then she began to read me the riot act, saying she had a right to talk with anyone she wanted to as often as she wanted to. Who the hell did I think I was, talking to her boss like that, etc., etc., etc. She never questions me when my secretary calls me or goes with me to meetings. etc. She read me the riot act to the point where I really felt it was major overkill. I just stood there and let her rave on me. Then I watched her walk out of the room. I was pissed, but decided to hold off until I had everything I needed. She said, "I'm going to bed, I'm really tired." There was no good night or I love you nothing. I went into the bedroom and watched as she reached behind her and tried to unzip her dress. She was working hard to get the dress off her body. I came over and started to help her. We finally got it off, it was that tight. She stood there with her back to me and quickly put on a robe before she turned and looked at me. I looked for rips or stains on the dress, but there were none. She said, "What are you looking for?" I didn't answer her, but instead, I said, "I have your dinner from the restaurant in the refrigerator if you're still hungry, but the lady at the clinic told me you were going to get something to eat with a couple of other people." I wasn't surprised when she said, "No, I'm not hungry. We all ate after the operation. I'm going to shower and go to sleep." I said, "They told me you left at 9:00 p.m. What took you so long, babe? Who did you go to dinner with in that dress?" She said, "We ate and were having fun, John, and I didn't realize what time it was, okay? We even went dancing afterward. Yes, I went out in this dress without you, John, and you know what? Everyone told me how good I looked in it. I was the woman everyone wanted tonight. John, the woman that everyone wanted to drill. It was great, and you know what? I loved all the attention." I reached for her arm, and she pulled away. She said, "No, John, not tonight, hats for sure. Maybe never again. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. Why don't you sleep in the other room?" I said, "What? No effing way in hell, who were you with, Dr. James?" She said, "Fine, I'll sleep there then. I want peace and quiet and not to be grabbed all night by you." I said, "All I wanted was a kiss good night from my wife, Sarah. I wasn't going to attack or assault you. Tell me, who were you out with? Was it Dr. James Martin?" She just looked at me and went to the bathroom. I followed her, and she shut the door. I stood there for a minute and then knocked, asking, "I want to know who you were with tonight, Sarah, and I'm not leaving until you tell me." There was nothing, so I yelled, "Goddamn it, Sarah, talk to me. What the hell is happening here to us?" She opened the door, dressed in a towel. She said, "For God's sake, okay, erase your damn kiss goodnight." She bent a little towards me, and I kissed her. She didn't return it. As she was closing the door, she said, "God, what a crybaby. No, will you leave me alone so I can get ready for bed? I'm tired." As I kissed her, I could smell the same aftershave lotion that was on the dress in her closet. I don't know why, but I reached for her, pulled her to me, and held her tight. She held the towel. She said, "Let me go. I want to shower and go to bed. Let go of me. Damn you." I realized she wasn't moving at all and was turning her head, avoiding my attempts to kiss her again. She was just standing there while I kissed her cheek and neck. She didn't move. Her face was a look of hate, and there was no love in her eyes at all, only sadness. I could smell the aftershave, and when I did manage to kiss her lips, it was like kissing a piece of stone. I broke the embrace and looked at her. "What is wrong with you?" She said very plainly, "I want to shower, I'm tired, and I want to go to bed. Okay? Good night. I'll see you in the morning." "Yes, we have to talk in the morning, Sarah, that's for damn sure." She said, "Yes, I know, John." She started to close the door when I said, "What does that mean? You know?" "You know what, Sarah?" I pushed the door open. "No, not now. All I want is to shower and go to bed. Now works for Mechamon. Let's talk." "No," she said again. "How about I join you in the shower? You looked so hot tonight, you got me all worked up." "No, John, jerk off." "What? What did you say to me?" "I told you to go jerk off. You won't be getting any sex from me. Now get out." I was shocked. She had never told me that before. What right did she have to say that to me? I'm her husband. But I still tried and said, "We'll make it worth your while." "No, John, let me shower so I can go to bed. If you have that much of an urge, go jerk off." She pushed more on the door. I said loudly, "No, Sarah. I'm not leaving here until you tell me what is going on. I'm asking my wife of 10 years to have sex with me right now. Tonight. God damn it. Well, I'm telling my so-called husband of 8 long years, no? Get the hell out of the bathroom." I started to pull on the towel and she screamed, fighting back, kicking, and hitting me with one hand, then using both hands to hold the towel from me. I held on to it, winning slowly. Finally, she was either too tired or just gave up. I wasn't sure. She just let it go and stood there looking at me. Then she said, "Happy now?" I looked at her magnificent body and beautiful face. I saw why she held the towel as tight as she did and why she didn't want to have sex with me. Her body was red and covered with hickey marks. Had she had anything else done to her? As I looked down her body, I saw her thighs were red with handprints on them. Then I saw there was a dried, stained line on each of her inner thighs. It had to come from where it was still leaking out and running down her legs. That's why she wanted to get a shower and why she told me no. I asked very softly, "Sarah, what is this?" I reached for and touched her. She jumped back a little, looked at me, and then took a deep breath as she said angrily, "What does it look like, John?" "It looks like the same thing that's on a pair of your new panties. It looks like semen. Is it Jameis?" She sighed loudly and said, "Oh Jesus, please let me take a shower, and then we can talk. Let me clean up first. Answer my question, Sarah. Is it semen? Is it Jameis?" I said the last 5 words so loud she jumped again, and I knew the neighbors heard me. She looked at me and then down at the floor as she said one word very softly, "Yes." That's all she said. I stood there looking at her. I asked again, "Is it Jameis?" She said yes again, then saw my face and said, "Oh God, don't start crying, John. Be a man, be one for the first time in your life. Oh, get out so I can shower. Do you have any idea why I'm crying, Sarah?" "Yes, because I had sex tonight with the new man in my life, the man you'll have to deal with from now on." I didn't hear all of what she said. I answered by saying no. I'm crying because of the love we don't have anymore. I'm crying because of the feeling of grief and sadness that washed over me tonight when I realized you were cheating on me. I'm crying because we are done as a husband and wife. I'm crying because I have only hate and contempt for you now. It's like I have changed completely over the past 4 hours, Sarah. I can't believe I went from worshiping, loving, and adoring you to hating and wishing you were dead. I would have died for you. Sarai would have done anything I could to keep us together. Anything, that is. But being a God, help me wish you would die right now in front of me. You've hurt me so bad, and you've killed me inside. I'm dead inside now. I feel nothing. No love, no desire, no happiness, no tenderness for you, only sadness and hate. She looked at me and finally, she said, "You are so sad, John. You have no idea what's been going on, have you? You just realized it tonight. Hat's sad. You're sad." She stood there for a few seconds and then finished by saying, "Look, I'm really tired. Are you done for now? We'll discuss it to the end tomorrow." "Oh yes, I'm done. And we're done, Sarah. We're done completely. I hope it was worth it. You lost your house, your husband, and I sure hope you're happy. Your kids will see about all that. But I don't just plan to roll over and let you take everything. But even if you do, I still got a newer and better lover. He's a doctor. Johnny's rich, and he is so much bigger and better than you. He loves me, and I love him. We told each other that tonight after we had 2 hours, John. We did it for 2 hours. When was the last time you could do that? Never, not since the first year we were married. You never give us 2 hours, do you, Sarah? You're always in a hurry. That's because your idea of sex is a waste of time. You do it like an old man. James does me like a stallion. I was good enough to give you 2 kids. She laughed and said, "What makes you think our kids are yours? What makes you think you're the father of any children?" She laughed, and I felt myself shrinking more and more from those words. Then she stopped talking and just stood there looking at me like I was the most pathetic person she had ever seen. "Are you telling me you know for sure that I'm not the father of our 2 kids? She smiled and said, "I got you worried now, don't I? To tell you the truth, John, I don't really know. They may be, or they may be from one of the other 2 men I was with at the time. None of us took any protection because you wanted kids. I never did and figured you'd take care of them, giving me more time to get laid. I figured if either of my lovers got me knocked up, you'd think you did it anyway. So, I don't know who the fathers are for our children, but I doubt it's you." I asked, "Why?" And she told me, "Well, to be honest, you're just too small in the tool department to get anyone knocked up. You're not big enough to deposit that deep inside me to mix with my seed." I sighed and said, "I am big enough for a normal woman, but for a never mind." "Well, at least you're not sure if that's good. They'll have them tested." She yelled, The hell you will. You leave our kids out of this, you idiot. I said, why, Sarah? Why did you stay married to me if you've been cheating on me all these years? She said, well, for my family and yours, I guess, and for security. You know, I did love you, John, when we first got married. But that all changed after the first time I got laid by a real man with a real tool. That was about 4 months after our first child. I guess he came on to me, and I loved the attention and how I felt young and free. You took care of the kids, and I let him have me almost every other night for 6 months when we worked together at nights. And I guess I've been waiting for the right guy ever since, you know. A doctor with a big tool, someone who could take care of me in every way. I wanted more out of life than a small tool husband and 2 kids. I said, and James? Is he the one you've been waiting for? She smiled and closed her eyes, saying, yes, John. I'm afraid for your sake he is. He asked me to leave you tonight and stay with him. Quite frankly, John, I was going to tell you that in the morning when we got up. I was going to tell you I wanted a separation, but honestly, it wouldn't have done us any good. Look, we've been done as a husband and wife for a long time. Well, at least I have as a wife. I think you seeing me like this, with his fresh juices running out of my body, will make it so much easier for both of us now. I guess there's no thinking about it or waiting or trial separation. We can just split everything 5,050 and get on with our lives. She smiled again, and this time I saw a very evil look on her face. She said, I don't see us together anymore unless you can stand me being with him whenever I want to be. I'll tell you right up front, I'll be spending more time with him than I will with you. But you'll have the kids anyway, so you should be okay. And I'll tell you what, they'll stay married to you for the kids' sake until they get older, but you'll have to deal with no sex for me at all. My body and love will be for James. He'll only be a mother for the kids. If you can't handle that, then I guess you'll lose me forever. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. My brain didn't work, it wasn't registering. I just looked at her, tears running down my face, and I was almost sobbing with sadness. My heart was breaking, and now she was stepping on it. She smiled a little and said, look at me, John. Don't hold your head down, look at my body. You can see how used it is. I loved him using meth body that now belongs to him completely. He drills me like you never did, not even the first times together. Not on our honeymoon, or anniversaries, or any time we have been together. He thrills me and drives me wild with lust, desire, and passion. He wants me all the time, John, and I want him. He's so much better than you in everything. Her words were cutting into me more and more, and the really sad thing was, I knew she was doing it on purpose. It was time for me to strike back the best way I could. Guilt and embarrassment were all I had. So, I said, how about being a father and someone who used to respect and love you like you were the only woman on the face of the earth? Or does he love you because he dresses you like the slut you are now? Does he want our children too? Sure. Does he tell you he loves them? Or are you all hell take when you leave me? She didn't answer me right away, so I continued. Will he love you when you're sick or hurt, and maybe so you can't screw him anymore? Will he love you then? How about when you're old and can just about stand and walk, let alone screw in 10 different positions? Or like I think he'll douse you up and then leave you for another, newer, and younger woman. Who was the woman before you, Sarah? Have you ever met her, seen her, know her, talked to her about him? She said, he was married a few years ago, but he's single now. No, I haven't met his ex-wife, and I don't want to. I know he desires me and wants me more than anything else in his life right now. He's even told me we could move away so I wouldn't have to see or bother with you again. He loves me, and I love him. I said, no, Sarah, I don't think he's better than me in everything, only in using you like a pump-up doll. She said, he does me wild, and with more lust in his thumb than you have in your entire body. You wouldn't understand what it means because you never had it in you. You last 1/10 of the time he does me. So, you gave up your children and your married life with me for a bigger tool? I hope for your sake he's worth it. A year from now, 10 years from now, if you make it that long, he'll cheat on you. I'm sure you weren't his first or his last. Guys like him never change, Sarah. All he wants is a victory, and then he keeps getting rewarded each time you lower yourself again by dressing or acting like you have been and going back to him. Good luck with him. I'm betting once you move in with him, he'll lose that excitement, and after less than a year, he'll be cheating on you with someone younger. She said, F you, John. You're just hurt and upset now about him and me. You're just talking sour grapes, that's all it is. But we are in love, and we like each other. He's wonderful, and he's taking me to the Caribbean next week. Yes, next week. I won't be here, I'll be packing my things, my new things, and my most sized things, and be leaving you over the weekend. When I come home, I'll get the rest of my stuff. Then we can deal with whatever you decide with regards to the divorce, or if you want me to stay and act as the kid's mother. But remember, I won't be your wife. We'll deal with all that when I get back from my wonderful trip. I had begun to walk away as she was saying this to me. I was sick, and my head was raging with pain. I just couldn't talk to her about this Anna Marie. It was over, and I knew it. She was yelling now as she finished her last comment to me. Yes, we'll deal with it when I get back from the Caribbean, when I get back from my honeymoon before my wedding. They'll have my lawyer contact yours on Monday. He erased his card with his telephone number on it. James gave it to me to give to you in the morning, but you might as well have it now since you know about us. I don't know what happened after that. I still don't recall it at all. There are dark places in my brain that show nothing, like I was sleeping. But he erased what I do recall when I heard the last comment she made about dealing with me after her wonderful trip and honeymoon before the wedding. It was like someone shoved a dagger into my stomach. I bent over, sick, and began to gag as I started to vomit. I stood up and began to turn, seeing her standing there with her hands on her hips. I vomited again on the rug. The last thing I recall for sure was that I began to run back towards her. There was a hate in me now that I didn't realize I had since the war. I knew I was going to kill. I couldn't stop. In a flash, I knew Sarah was going to die. I had snapped. I had gone absolutely mad. She saw me, and it took a second for her to see the look on my face. Hers turned pale gray. She screamed and tried to get into the bathroom and closed the door. She pushed from the inside as I pushed from the outside. She yelled, "You better not touch me, John. Get out. Get out." She pushed as hard as she could, but didn't make it. I pushed the door hard, and it hit her, knocking her backwards. She reached out with her hand to try and stop her fall. She didn't make it again. She fell back and hit her head hard on the edge of the tub. There was a popping sound, and then a small pool of blood began to form next to her head, next to the tub. She just lay there. I felt her pulse and knew she was dead. I called the police. It was a long and really bad 2 months during which I had a hearing regarding her death and whether I would be charged. The good doctor showed up and told the judge about the affair they were having. He also told the judge she was going to separate from me and that she was going to tell me the news that weekend. He said he was the one who had put the marks on her body and that he was the one who had sex with her that night twice. He felt that when I saw what he had done to her, I snapped and killed her. When it was my turn, I told the judge I didn't know anything about the affair until I saw my wife's body lying there. My wife never said a word to me about it, and I must have been asleep when she got home at 1:00 a.m. I acted in total shock when I told the court about it. As for what I said happened, I told the court about the dinner that night and that she had worn her new blue dress. I even had the restaurant manager and waiter explain that we were there and that she had left early to go to the clinic to work on a little girl. I had no idea she was meeting a lover instead. The story I gave was that I was in bed when she got home and didn't know what time she really got in. The kids were at her mom's, and no one else was in the house. I woke up when I heard a loud bang sound coming from the front of the house. I got up to see what the sound was from. That's when I opened the door to the bathroom and saw my beautiful wife, Sarah, just lying there. I told them I called 911 immediately and tried giving her mouth-to-mouth until they showed up. I cried real tears during the entire trial. They were real tears because she had broken my heart and killed me inside. There weren't any tears because she was dead. The judge didn't think there was enough evidence for a trial, and he declared her death a terrible accident. Now, I have only one problem. Do I seek revenge on the good doctor, James? Remember, it takes two to tango. And think, if a beautiful, well-built woman came onto you, would you care if she was married? If you were buried in her as deep as you could get, and she was going wild drilling you? I'm not sure yet. But then, I saw my 2 kids in the hallway with my mother. I did have a blood test taken, but they never knew why. I told them they had to have one if they wanted to go on a Disney cruise with me when school was over for the summer. They were my kids, by 99.98 proof from the DNA test. Do I seek revenge on James Martin? No. Why take the chance? Unless the hate I have for him right now can't be dealt with and won't go away. But as my dead wife said, they'll deal with all that when I get back from my wonderful vacation. Thanks for watching. How would you react if you discovered your partner's betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Deceived Husbands for more stories.
I might be the first husband in the history of messed-up marriages to actually send his wife's lover a thank you card. Honestly, I really did. I'm almost never sick, but there was a particularly nasty strain of flu going around the office where I was working one Tuesday morning, and I was showing the symptoms rather vocally. So, rather than infect the whole room, my boss sent me home. It was around noon, and I figured my wife, Sophia, could nurse me properly, get me the chicken soup I needed, take my temperature, and generally fuss over me before putting me to bed. When I pulled onto the street where I lived and approached my house, I noticed a blue pickup truck parked in the driveway. I really didn't think anything of it at that particular moment. I couldn't think of anything except how awful I felt. The vehicle wasn't familiar, and since it was taking up space where my old SUV normally sat, I parked by the curb. I went in through the garage, which opened into the kitchen. There was no sign of Sophia in the kitchen or the front den. At that point, a queasy feeling unrelated to the flu began to build in my gut, especially when I approached the back of the house where our bedroom was located and began to hear the telltale sounds of an affair. I tiptoed toward the door, which was cracked ever so slightly, and peeked in. Well, of course, I saw Sophia with some lanky guy I'd never seen before, and she was enjoying herself. My reaction was strange. Part of me obviously wanted to go in there and break up their party, but another part of me was just numb. I should say here and now that I was not aroused. When you love someone for as long as I loved Sophia, the sight of that person cheating on you is not a turn-on if you're wired normally, and I was. I've always been a person who took fidelity seriously. In the space of a heartbeat, I had an epiphania moment of clarity when my future suddenly spread out before my eyes. I made a decision in that moment that my life was changing for the better. I took out my cell phone, pushed the door open, raised the phone with the camera mode on, and took about 4 really good pictures of the startled lovers. Having gotten visual evidence of my wife's adultery and that of her lover, I turned on my heel and walked briskly out of the house the same way I had entered. I stopped and grabbed a screwdriver on my way out of the garage, then casually used it to poke large holes in 2 of the tires on the jerk's truck. I know it was childish, but it was the least I could do. Then I got in my car and drove off, though not before jotting down the license plate number of the pickup. It was the first day of the rest of my life. As I drove more or less aimlessly, I thought about what I'd just seen and realized that it had been brewing for a long time. I had no idea how long Sophia had been cheating on me, whether this guy was the first or just another in a string. It didn't matter because, truthfully, I didn't care. I guess at this point a little background is in order. My name is David Harris, and at the time of this story, I was 38 years old and had been married to Sophia for exactly half that time. At one point, we were passionately in love indeed. It was almost love at first sight. We met not long after I graduated from college and started in with a major tech company located in a mid-sized Midwestern city. I had been raised in northern Montana, and I had hoped to find something closer to the mountains where I had camped just about every year as a kid. Sophia was from the city where we had lived the entirety of our married life. I honestly can't pin down when my marriage turned sour. It was a very long, very slow decline that wouldn't have been noticeable to an outsider, but it was there, and I could sense it toward the end. We all have dreams, and mine was to live in the mountains and write the great American novel. I think Sophia's big dream was simply to land a husband and raise a family there in her hometown. You know how dreams usually go, they fall apart on the rocky shores of reality. The reality for me was that I ended up stuck in this nondescript Midwestern town, writing computer programs for the same company I started with after college. I got to a certain point on the corporate ladder and then got lost as more ambitious men and women passed me by. Part of my problem was I wouldn't cut corners. I was a perfectionist where my work was concerned, and I didn't suffer fools who took the easy way out. Another part of my problem was that I got to be so good at my particular job that I was indispensable in that position. As a result, I got passed over for promotions, although I did get regular raises and occasional bonuses. But the other part of my problem was that I had a fairly passive personality. I was content to go along to get along, and that extended to my marriage. Don't get me wrong, Sophia was a nice-looking woman with dark brown hair and an ample figure, and I had always loved her. She never quite lost all of the weight she gained having our 2 children, but I still thought she was attractive, and apparently so did someone else. We bought a house not long after we were married. It was in a decent neighborhood, but certainly not the high-rent district. The house was built in the 1970s, and some of the things in the house hadn't been replaced in all that time. So we gradually replaced one appliance after the other with no particular rhyme or reason. We were always fixing this and patching that. We always talked about buying something better, but after refinancing the mortgage as collateral for loans a couple of times, we found we had priced ourselves out of any chance of selling it. In other words, what it would have taken us to pay off the loan and get something better was more than the house was really worth. We could have sold it for less to someone as a fixer-upper, but that still wouldn't have solved the problem of finding someplace better to live that we could afford. Then there was the problem with our children. 3 years into our marriage, we had a son, Ethan. 4 years later came a girl, Lily. These kids were the poster children for why adults in the animal kingdom sometimes eat their young. I tried to be a disciplinarian as much as I could, but Sophia's idea of discipline was to give them whatever they wanted, and she refused to let me punish them for any infraction whatsoever. The consequences were pretty drastic. Ethan was lazy, disrespectful, and slovenly. Lily was a neurotic mess. They learned at an early age how to play Sophia and me against each other to get what they wanted, and as a result, we lost control of them by the time they became teenagers. Ethan was about to lose his 6th minimum wage job since barely graduating from high school. It seems employers like for their workers to show up on time and in a reasonably presentable mode of attire. They're funny that way. He was living in a dumpy old house in town with 3 of his slacker buddies, and I was pretty sure he was at the very least smoking pot and drinking a lot. Lily was about to flunk out of high school altogether because she couldn't keep her headphones out of her ears long enough to pay attention to anything in class. She was also dating some scuzzy college guy with tattoos all up and down both arms. Sophia was a nurse, and at some point in her career, she decided she liked the night shift. So, on the days that she worked, I'd get home about 5:30, would sometimes have supper, then shed leave for work around 6:15. As a result of our conflicting schedules, we spent less and less time interacting with each other, and our relationship began to dry up. We'd make time for each other once or twice a month, usually on a weekend afternoon when she was off. It was decent enough, there's no such thing as a bad relationship, but it was pretty mundane. We'd get naked, feel each other up for a few minutes, I'd get her off, then we'd just drift apart again. Once in a blue moon, Sophia would want me to show her affection. Still, we got along okay until about a year before this incident when she started turning witchy on me. She'd always been a little moody, but I guess when midlife hit, it hit her hard. Soon, she was finding excuses not to be intimate, at least not with me. Maybe it was a headache, maybe she was tired. Often she went to bed way before I was ready, etc., 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 and she was always finding fault in something I'd done or not done. Looking back on it, the signs were there, I just didn't see them. I'd sometimes call the house during the days when I knew Sophia should have been up and around, and I'd get no answer. Sometimes she'd stop in for drinks with some co-workers at some all-night bar that catered to night shift workers. A few times she'd come home on weekends when she'd worked and immediately start a load of laundry, like she had something she wanted to wash before I could see it. Everything pointed up to Sophia's adultery, but like I said, it really didn't matter. So let's review. I was stuck in a dead-end job in a nowhere town. I was living in a run-down house that was overpriced. My love life was in the toilet. My witchy wife was cheating on me, and my children were budding delinquents. What would you do? Probably what I did. Actually, the very first thing I did was go to the walk-in clinic to see about my flu. I got a steroid shot and a prescription for an antibiotic. Feeling a little better, I went to the local superstore to have my prescription filled and to buy some things I'd need: toiletries, a hot plate, a small pot, some soup, and sodas. Then I drove all the way across town and got me a motel room. I had stopped at the bank on my way to the superstore and gotten out some cash to pay for a place to stay for a couple of days. Once I got settled in, I sat down and wrote out a game plan for the next few days. While I heated a can of soup, I ate as much as I could take. put the rest in the mini refrigerator, crawled in bed, and crashed. It was dark when I awoke, and I was a little disoriented until I remembered where I was and why I was there. I was still weak from the flu and really out of it. It took 2 days, my illness and the shock of seeing Sophia like that, to really absorb what had happened. I heated up what was left of the soup, drank a soda, and watched a football game on TV, then went back to bed. I did check my cell phone and saw a dozen calls from Sophia. I smiled grimly at that. Let her sweat, I thought. I woke up the next morning feeling quite a bit better. The first thing I did was call the office to tell them I wasn't going to be into work. My boss secretary answered the phone, and after I told her why ID called, she told me that Sophia had called all afternoon hunting me. She did. Did she? I said. If she calls today, and I imagine she will, just tell her I've called in sick and won't be in today. That'll at least get her off your back. Alex, where are you? She asked. Let me put it this way and see if you can figure it out, I said. I'm not at my house. Okay. Then I hung up. I had made it very plain, I thought, that I no longer had a home. I had thought a lot about my course of action, and the more I thought about it, the better I liked it. I really couldn't be mad at Sophia. I mean, it was pretty obvious that she didn't want to be married to me any longer. For some reason, she wanted something I couldn't give her, whatever that was, and I wasn't going to hold her back from whatever it was that she wanted. She wanted to be with other men? Fine. I'd give her the freedom to do so, and I'd free myself in the process. But I still had some work to do. There were going to be consequences for both Sophia and her lover. Nothing terribly drastic, but consequences nonetheless. The first thing I did was call the motor vehicle department to tell them I was interested in buying a pickup truck, but I'd lost the owner's phone number. All I had was the license plate number, plus the make, model, and color of the truck. The friendly woman on the other end of the line cheerfully gave me the man's name and address. My next move was to call a friend of mine who was a lawyer and obtain the name of the best divorce attorney in town. I called that worthy a lady, as it happened, and scheduled an appointment for one that afternoon. I showered, then went down to the lobby for a very light breakfast, then went to the bank. I had 2 certificates of deposit that I'd bought a number of years earlier. I cashed those in, withdrew half of the money in our joint savings account, and half of what little there was in the checking account. I put most of the money in a new checking account that I opened in my name only, along with a bank debit card, and still walked out with a little over $7,500 in traveler's checks. I spent the next few minutes calling credit card companies to cancel all but one of my cards and have the accounts put in my name only. I also paid up the balances on each of those cards. The one I generously left for Sophia, I didn't bother paying on. Let her worry about that one. Next, I went to a branch of the public library where I bought some computer time. I took the 4 images I'd taken on my cell phone, downloaded them onto an email address I had, and printed out 2 copies of each one. I have to admit they were very clear and explicit. Then I looked up information on the fellow who'd been with my wife the previous afternoon, one Greg Johnson. I found out he was married, so I jotted down his wife's name. Then I put a copy of the pictures with a note attached letting her know where I could be reached for more information and put them in an envelope with her name and address on it. I went to the post office, bought some stamps, and mailed it to her. Then it was time for my appointment with Mary Woods, the attorney. I told her what I'd done and what my plans were, and she just nodded her head. When I showed her the pictures, her first question, however, was one of caution. Divorce seems like a pretty drastic step on such short notice, she said. Are you sure you don't want to try to work it out? What's there to work out? I said. My wife has a lover, and I don't want to stand in the way of true love. I have some places I want to go, some things I want to do with my life, and staying here with a cheating wife isn't in those plans. In the end, I agreed to a legal separation for 90 days. The divorce papers were drawn up, and if after 3 months I was still determined to end my marriage, then the papers would be filed and Sophia would be served. Now, if you go forward with the divorce, what sort of settlement do you want? Linda asked. I've already taken half of the liquid cash in our bank, I said. She's got a 401(a) that she's paying into from her work. She can keep that, but she also doesn't get any of my 401(k) either. She can keep the house. The mortgage is in her name anyway, and I don't want it. If she does sell it, though, I want half of all proceeds from the sale. Okay, Mr. Smith, I guess that about covers it, Linda said. They'll look forward to hearing from you in about 3 months. My last stop was to the office, but not to work. I walked into the human resources department and asked about what would be involved in taking early retirement. I had 20 years in with the company, so I had a good bit of retirement built up. I was told I could begin drawing on my retirement pension when I turned 60, which was 15 years away. I frowned at that but brightened when I asked about cashing in my 401k. Of course, the lady at HR strongly discouraged that because of the hefty tax penalty I'd have to pay. Nevertheless, if I wanted, I could get an immediate cash out of approximately $65,000 if I chose to do so. I thanked the lady and headed back to my motel. I was tired, and after fixing another pot of chicken soup, I went to bed and slept for nearly 7 hours. It was after midnight when I awoke, and I knew I now faced the hardest part of my day, going back to the house and collecting my things. Sophia was supposed to be at work, but I wasn't sure if she'd actually gone into work. As it turned out, she hadn't. Sophia was asleep when I slipped in quietly, and the house was silent. Apparently, Ethan was so concerned about my whereabouts that he'd gone out, like he always did on Friday night. I wondered if the kids would even miss me when I was gone. Probably not. The first thing I did was get what I needed out of the garage: tools, camping gear, and other assorted useful items. I went into the little office area and got my laptop, plugged it in, downloaded some files from the home PC onto the laptop, then carried it to my vehicle. I had a couple of boxes with me that I loaded with CDs along with a portable player, a lot of books, and some mementos that meant something to me, including a few pictures, though none of Sophia. After I loaded that stuff up in my vehicle, I got some suitcases out and walked softly into my former bedroom. I was about halfway finished with packing when I heard a small gasp behind me, then Sophia's voice. "Alex, where have you been?" She said. "I've been worried sick about you." "Have you now?" I said, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. "What are you doing?" Sophia said. "What's it look like I'm doing?" I answered sarcastically. "Packing," Sophia said in a trembling voice. "Give that girl a gold star for brilliance," I said. "Alex, I'm so sorry," she started. "Sophia, I don't want to hear your excuses or your apologies," I said. "It really doesn't matter why, or how, or even who, although I do know that much. You want to love someone else, fine. I'm letting you. But I don't love him," she began. "I love you. I don't want him, I want you." "Could have fooled me," I said in an acidic tone of voice. "Sounded to me like you wanted him pretty badly yesterday afternoon. Let me see if I can recall the exact words. Oh God. Screw me. Isn't that about it?" Sophia just buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I looked at her evenly. Whatever brief flash of anger I'd had was gone, replaced by I'm not sure pity. No, not that. Disdain. Maybe a little. Disgust. Yeah, a bit. But mainly, I realized that the biggest thing I was feeling was emptiness. I realized in that moment that I didn't have any feelings for her whatsoever. I just didn't care anymore. I finished packing and let her sob into her pillow. It wasn't until I started out the bedroom door with the suitcases that she jumped off the bed and tried to stop me. "Wait," Sophia cried. "Don't leave me, Alex, please. Can't we work this out? Please, I'm sorry. It wasn't anything. It was just a mistake." I just stared at her silently as I carefully extricated myself from her clinging arms and walked to the front of the house. Sophia followed me, sobbing hysterically. I pointed out the notice of legal separation sitting on the kitchen table among the dirty remnants of that night's pizza dinner. "They'll be back in 3 months, early February," I said. "If I'm still thinking then like I am now, I'm following through on a divorce. I will let you know generally where I am, but I'm leaving, and I'm not sure yet where I'm going to be. Goodbye, Sophia. I'll see you around." "Alex, no," Sophia cried as I walked out the front door with my suitcases. I didn't look back as I climbed into my vehicle and headed back across town to my motel room. The next day was Saturday, so I slept in. When I got going, I packed up what I had in the motel room and checked out. At $85 a night, the motel was a little steep, and there was a place near my office that catered to visiting business people. They had long-term rates that were considerably cheaper than the average motel. For approximately $45 a night, I rented a clean room for 2 weeks that had a nice little kitchenette, internet cable access, and a large television that had pay-per-view movies if I was so inclined. I did sample the movies being offered on the TV, but mostly I kicked back and indulged myself on football all weekend. doing absolutely nothing else. Then I went to work the next Monday morning. The first thing I did was walk into my boss' office and hand him my letter of resignation, effective in 2 weeks. Needless to say, everyone at the office was stunned. I'd been there so long and in the same job that I guess I'd become part of the landscape. My boss, for one, was in a panic. He spent the whole 2 weeks trying to talk me out of retiring, but I was adamant. On Tuesday of the first week, I got a call from my daughter. It was a rather enlightening conversation. "Daddy, why are you leaving us?" Lily asked. "You'll have to ask your mother that," I replied. "She said to ask you," Lily said. "Okay," I said. Friday afternoon, I caught her with some other man. I was sick with the flu, took off work early, and there she was. "I've got the pictures to prove it." "Wow," Lily said. I didn't think she had it in her. "Well, that explains why she's been so weepy. Daddy, she's a wreck. She just sits around crying and cursing herself. You know, she called in sick all 3 days this weekend. Look, tell your mother to get a grip on herself," I said through clenched teeth. "If she thinks she can guilt-trip me into coming back to her, she's very mistaken. I've already put in for my retirement, and a week from Saturday, I'm out of here. After that, what she does, what you do, and what your brother does are none of my concern." "Well, I love you too, Dad," Lily cried. "Hey, you never gave a damn about me before now. Why should you start now?" I said. "You were just afraid the gravy train's about to roll out of the station." "That's not true," Lily said a little pensively. I need you. You're the only one in this house with any sense, and I don't know what's going to happen without you." "Oh, I'm sure you'll manage," I said. "Look, Lily, I'm sorry about what I said. That was mean of me. They'll be in touch, and he'll be home for Christmas, okay? I love you, really." "I know, Daddy," she said with a sniffle. "I love you too." Ethan never did call. I had a pretty busy 2 weeks. Sophia tried to call any number of times, but after I hung up on her a few times, she got the message that I didn't want to talk to her. Her friends from work tried to get me to at least see her, but I refused and said so in pretty harsh terms. Turns out Greg Johnson was a nurse up in the unit where Sophia worked, and they'd been seeing each other for about 6 months. Most everyone I talked to said they thought he was the only one Shed stepped out on me with, but they didn't know for sure. I very pointedly told all of them how much I appreciated them telling me what my wife was doing behind my back. They didn't have much to say after that. I got a call in the middle of the first week from Greg Johnson's wife, and apparently, Sophia wasn't the first person, married or otherwise, had been able to fool around with, but Sophia was going to be the last, at least while he was her husband, because I had finally given her the solid proof she needed to show him the door. Funny, but I never heard from Jake either about Sophia or his ruined tires. I had an awful lot to do before I left my work behind. I had to train someone who could handle my job until they hired a full-time replacement. I had to get my 10-year-old vehicle serviced. I had to scout around for a broker who could set up my 401k in a private account, and I had to get with HR about my severance pay and cashing in my remaining sick time. I spent most of my downtime watching TV, fooling around on my laptop, or shopping for things I would need when I left town. I also visited a few of my friends, all of whom expressed their disbelief that Sophia really would cheat on me. All too soon, the second Friday arrived, my last day of work, and with it came a little sense of regret. I'd put in 20 years at that company, and I'd made a lot of friends there. At lunch that day, my boss called our department together, and we had a little retirement party, and that's when I finally lost my composure. I was trying to give a little thank you speech when I suddenly broke down and cried. The first time I'd cried over anything in years. I wept both because I was leaving and because of the circumstances that had driven me to my decision to retire. I had kept myself so busy over the previous 2 weeks that I hadn't given myself a chance to let out the emotions over Sophia's cheating, and seeing my colleagues gathered in my honor was just too much for me to overcome. But I got over it pretty quick, especially when Anna Cooper came over to me and invited me to an after-work gathering with a few of them at a local bar. Of course, I said yes, even though I made it clear that I don't drink. Anna was a fellow computer geek, but she was a damn good-looking geek. She was in her early 30s, a tall blonde divorce with a 10-year-old daughter who was spending the weekend with her father, and as she told me that, she gave me a very smoky look. I'll admit that kind of confused me. I mean, I'm not bad-looking. In fact, I look considerably younger than my years, but a ladies' man, am not. Or at least I didn't think I was. Am a little shorter than average, about 59. I wear glasses. I have a little bit of a belly, and while I'm no weakling, am no fitness freak either. But I was about to find out that I had more appeal than I'd ever imagined. There was a group of 7, 3 women and 2 men besides Anna and myself, and for once in my life, I was the man of the hour. We sat for several hours drinking beer well. I had tea and told stories about the plant, about the town, about each other. In the midst of the festivities, we also took time to have dinner. As the night wore on, I was sitting next to Anna, and it became rather obvious that she was coming on to me. She was sitting real close, putting her hand on my thigh or on my arm. I couldn't decide whether she was just doing that because she was drunk or whether she was serious. Finally, about 9, we started drifting our separate ways. I wanted to get an early start the next day and got up to leave. Then I looked over at Anna, and I saw that she really shouldn't drive home, so I offered her a ride. After getting hugs and handshakes, wishing me well, I walked Anna out to my vehicle. When we got in, she moved in real close to me, put her hand on my thigh, and gave me a penetrating look. "I'm really not all that drunk," Anna said. "I just wanted you to give me a ride, and not home either." "So, where do you want me to take you?" I said, deliberately playing dumb. "Take me to your motel," she said, and she pulled my face around and kissed me hard and deep. "Anna, you don't have to do this," I said when we broke apart. "I mean, yeah, I'm lonely, but I don't want any sympathy." "Sympathy's got nothing to do with it," she said. "Alex, I've had a crush on you ever since I started working here, and I've finally got a chance. I'm not passing it up." "You've had a crush on me?" I said. "Come on, Anna, look at me. I'm a middle-aged, gray-haired old man. In the first place, you're not old. In the second place, your gray hair makes you look distinguished. In the third place, you're very good-looking. And in the fourth place, you're one of the nicest men I know. You're one of the few men in that building who's never made a pass at me or any of the other gals, for that matter. Trust me, we've noticed. You've always been a gentleman. I've always been a married gentleman," I said with just a trace of bitterness. "Look, you're going off tomorrow, and you deserve some TLC before you go," Anna said. "Now, are you going to take me back to your motel and spend some time with me or not?" I laughed then and started up my vehicle. Truth is, I'd had many a fantasy about Anna Cooper, but I always figured she was out of my league, and besides, I was a married man who believed in fidelity. Technically, I guess I was still married, but I was already legally separated, and in my heart, I knew my marriage was over. Anna Cooper was offering me her companionship, and I'd be damned if I was going to pass it up. We were all over each other the moment the door to my room closed, kissing wildly, our hands caressing each other's bodies. In no time at all, I was feasting my eyes on Anna's slender body as she sat back on the bed. We spent the evening talking, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. It was different, however. Anna was a lot more active and engaged than Sophia had been, at least with me. We held each other as we worked together for our mutual pleasure. I could see on Anna's face that she was enjoying herself. I fell back on the bed and gazed as Anna sat up, then she carefully, "Thanks," I said. Sophia would never let me do that. She thought it was demeaning. "I can see where some women might think that," Anna said. "Personally, I love it." We lay back on the bed and rested. Then we spent the rest of the night talking and connecting on a deeper level. After that, we fell asleep together. We woke up to the pale light of dawn filtering through the drapes. Then we got up, showered, and dressed. Anna helped me pack. Then I checked out and drove her back to where her car was parked. Before she left, she gave me a very soft kiss. Then she stared into my eyes. "Alex, all I can say is your wife's an idiot," she said. "She doesn't know what she's thrown away." "Well, I guess sometimes you get used to someone and get in a rut," I said. "I probably let things slide too much from my side. You know how it goes." "Yeah, I guess I do," Anna said. "Alex, I hope you find what you're looking for, but if you ever decide to come back here for any length of time, look me up. I guarantee you'll treat you a hell of a lot better than Sophia did." "Thanks, Anna," I said. "We'll stay in touch. You never know what's going to happen. You take care." "Okay? You too," she said. "You be careful." And with that, I was off. I put my vehicle on the interstate, headed west, and I didn't look back. I was headed off alone to travel the country with no plans, no itinerary, no agenda. I had some places out west I wanted to see, some things I wanted to do, but I had no particular schedule. I would go wherever my nose led me. It was something ID wanted to do for years, but had never been able to do. Either I couldn't afford it, I had family concerns, or work concerns. Now I had none of those things holding me back. My first destination, however, was my old hometown. I wanted to spend a few days with my folks, who were starting to get on up in years, and I wanted to see some old friends. I ended up seeing one I hadn't counted on, and it was a delightful experience. My parents were disappointed to hear that Sophia and I were splitting up, but my mom also said she wasn't surprised. "She just hasn't seemed very happy the last few times you've been here," Mom said. The following Monday, I was in the supermarket picking up some supplies for my trip when I heard my name being called. I looked around, and a big smile creased my face as I saw a familiar face from my past. It was Donna Matthews, a friend from school that I went to school with. She was actually a year behind me, but we'd always seemed to have a class or two together every year, and we got to be friendly. At the time, Donna was a popular girl who was a little too outgoing for me, but time had mellowed her a little bit. She had learned the hard way that the fast life wasn't always the good life. But time had still been generous to her because she was still a beauty. If anything, age had made her better looking than when she was in high school, softening her features and adding a little grace to her demeanor. She was a little shorter than average, with thick dark hair and expressive brown eyes. She had moved back to town after divorcing her second husband and was an assistant manager at the store. She lived alone in a small house in a quiet neighborhood not far from her daughter's family. We chatted for a few minutes, getting caught up with our lives. When I told her I was divorcing my wife, her eyes lit up. "I'm off tomorrow," she said in an inviting tone of voice. "How would you like to have dinner with me?" "I'd love to," I said. "Any place in particular?" "How about my place?" She said. "It's been a while since I fixed dinner for a friend." I arrived at Donna's place about 7 the next night to find her dressed casually but attractively, and her face quite tastefully made up. We entered her small but tidy little house and were soon enjoying a homemade meal. I was about to discover that Donna was a terrific cook, but I also learned that she was a skilled conversationalist. While waiting for dinner to finish cooking, we sat in her living room real close and got caught up with each other's lives. She was very understanding about what had happened to me, but also about what had happened to Sophia. Donna had experienced her own share of heartbreaks, and she was able to give me some insights from both sides of the fence. It didn't make me feel any better about it, but it did help. Dinner was something special: enchiladas, rice, and the best flan I've ever tasted in my life. "How do you stay as slim as you do when you cook like this?" I asked as I pushed my bloated belly away from the table. "Oh, I only cook like this on special occasions," Donna said with a laugh. "If I ate like this every day, I'd be as wide as I am tall." We retired to the front room then and sat real close on the couch again. We talked for a bit, getting around to why Shed invited me over that night. "Because I wanted to do something I never got a chance to do when we were in high school," she said. "You were always so nice, so cute, so kind, but I knew I could never have you then. Times were different, and I had my own issues to deal with. But you don't have that problem now, do you?" I said as I brought my face real close to hers. We kissed then, and I lost myself in her full lips and the warmth of her embrace. Donna was acting like someone who appreciated this moment, a woman who hadn't experienced this kind of connection in a while, which made me appreciate it all the more. After a while, we found ourselves relaxing and sharing stories of our pasts. We laughed about old times and reflected on where life had taken us. It was a cathartic experience for both of us, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was connecting with someone on a deep, meaningful level. That moment was the first time I thought about thanking Greg Johnson for setting the events in motion that had led me to that point. Thanks to Jake and his affair with my wife, I was free of my comfortable but boring life in a nowhere town. I was free of an increasingly loveless marriage and a chaotic family life in a decaying house. I was free of a job that had long since ceased to challenge me in a large corporation where I was lost in the shuffle. I was free to go anywhere, do anything, and connect with anyone I wanted, and I couldn't have done that with a clear conscience had I not caught my wife and her lover in the act of adultery. After catching our breath from the evening's conversation, Donna and I continued to enjoy each other's company. It was the first of what I hoped would be many nights like this. We spent the next day visiting with each other and catching up on lost time before I set out in earnest the following day. As I drove, I reflected that it had been exactly 3 weeks since ID caught Sophia and Jake. 3 weeks that had completely changed my life. This trip was the first step in living my new life. Over the next few months, I wandered the western half of the country, seeing places I had only read about. My first stop was Mt. Rushmore, then I spent a couple of days exploring the site of the Battle of Little Bighorn. I walked the grounds and communed with the ghosts of history, enjoying the freedom that came with being on my own. After that, I drove to Jackson Hole and camped out for a week while I toured Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. It was a liberating experience, being out in the open, away from the pressures of my previous life. From there, I drove up to spend some time in northern Idaho, camping on the banks of a beautiful lake. I had been there once before when I was a teenager at a Boy Scout jamboree. While I was there, I fished the lake and hiked the trails, enjoying the cool mountains of the northern Rockies. When I awoke one morning in late October to 3 inches of snow on the ground, however, I knew it was time to move on to more temperate climates. I went to Seattle, then down the Pacific coast through Oregon to spend some time in the wine country, and yes, I did sample some of the excellent wine that the area produces before going to Yosemite for several days. After that, I visited an aging aunt and uncle in the Los Angeles area, and he helped me achieve a long-held desire to see Southern Cal play UCLA in one of the truly big rivalries in college football at one of the most historic stadiums in the country. I also took a day to spend at the beach, getting an eyeful of all the beautiful scenery. I was in a gift shop across the street from the beach when I saw a postcard and got the wicked idea of sending one to my wife and her lover. It showed a scenic view of the coastline with the heading that read, "Greetings from the West Coast." I wrote a note on each one, thanking them for screwing around on me so I could take this trip. Then I sent one to the house for Sophia and one to the hospital for Jake. That was the weekend before Thanksgiving, and it was time for me to get to where I really wanted to go. My best friend from high school lived in a beautiful mountain town not far from the Four Corners. He and his wife had started a small business, and they needed someone to help with computer marketing and other cyber arts. It was perfect for me. He owned a small house that had been using as a rental property where I could stay, and he offered a flexible work schedule that would allow me the freedom to go wherever I wanted whenever I wanted. I had spent a lot of spare time on the road doing a lot of writing, and I had the makings of a pretty good book. I simply wrote about myself and my trip and why I was doing it, along with other pertinent reflections. Once I completed my business with Sophia and settled in Montana, I didn't have time to polish my work. It was all about the changes in a middle-aged life as a result of one disastrous event. I didn't know it that Monday when I headed east toward Montana, but my life was about to change again in a completely unexpected way. I had been in Bozeman a couple of days when Chris, my friend Kyle's wife, announced that she had invited a friend of hers over to share Thanksgiving dinner with us. This woman lived alone, Chris said, and didn't socialize much, but Chris hated the thought of someone being alone on Thanksgiving, so she had extended the invitation, and it had been accepted. Funny how life pivots on little decisions like that. Maybe I would have met Maureen O'Brien anyway once I moved to Bozeman, but who knows what might have happened in the interim. Perhaps she'd have decided to move on. Or maybe someone else would have swooped in and knocked her off her feet. I don't know. All I do know is that when Maureen walked through the door of Kyle and Chris' house, my stomach did a little flip, and before the day was out, I was determined that I was going to make her mine. I saw a woman in her mid-30s who was quite tall at nearly 6 feet and slender but not bony. She had a pale complexion peppered with freckles, flaming red hair cut very short, and soft green eyes that were an enchanting blend of mischief and sadness. When she opened her mouth to speak, it sounded like a melody of warmth and kindness. Yes, she was a full-blooded native of Ireland who had come to the States with an Irish dance troupe, one of those river dance groups, and had settled in Denver. She had moved to Bozeman about a year earlier after breaking off an engagement to be married 2 days before the wedding. It seemed she had caught her groomtobe at his bachelor party in the act of making a mistake. She hadn't intended on crashing his party, but she and a couple of her girlfriends had been on their way to breakfast after their hen party when she happened to pass a strip club and saw her fiancé and his group coming out. One of the girls from the club was wrapped around her betrothed, and she had decided to follow them to see what happened. It had been an emotionally scarring event, one more blow in a life that had seen plenty of them. Her father had been an alcoholic who beat her mother until they fled him when Maureen was 15 after Head started beating on her. Even then, she said, her father stalked them relentlessly until the police finally stepped in, and he was charged and convicted of spousal abuse. She'd subsequently been assaulted when she was on holiday in London when she was 22, and Shed had her heart broken several times after that, culminating in her fiancé's mistake. I think the reason we hit it off so well was because we understood what betrayal was all about. Over the previous weeks of traveling, I had thought a lot about Sophia and what she'd done, and I couldn't get past the inconsistency of her protestations of love for me with the image of her in bed with another man. She had betrayed me and our marriage, and I didn't have a clue as to why. I had been telling myself all along that I didn't care, but that wasn't entirely true. I did care. I wanted to know what had happened to the love we'd once shared, why Sophia had felt she was entitled to take a lover on the side, knowing how I felt about fidelity. I did keep up with what was going on back home, mostly through emails to and from Lily, who seemed to have decided at this late date to repair our relationship. She was plainly worried about Ethan, who had indeed lost his job and was begging Sophia to let him move back in. I spoke to Sophia a couple of times briefly, but whenever she started to get weepy or tried to apologize, I cut her off. I did promise her that I would sit down and listen to her when I got back. It wasn't going to change anything, but I wanted to hear what she had to say. Nothing was going to change my mind. By then, I had made my decision on what I wanted, and I wanted to live in Bozeman. As a result, I spent 3 weeks getting settled in my new home and helping Kyle and Chris with their business, and I was spending a lot of time with Maureen. We talked long and deep Thanksgiving night about everything, to Chris' amazement and delight, and when I walked with her out to her car, we sort of looked at each other, and we kissed. There wasn't a lot of passion in it, but there was a lot of promise. Over the 3 weeks I was there before I returned home, or rather, my soon-to-be former home, we dated probably a dozen times, and we got more and more intimate. I knew I had to be careful because of Maureen's past. She had been hurt badly by others, and she was wary of being hurt again. But the more I got to know her, the more I realized that despite her history, she was a woman with a deep and genuine nature. She was a warm, caring person with a sense of humor and a joy for life that was infectious. Waiting was excruciating because the more time I spent with Maureen, the more I wanted to be with her. She was so kind, so thoughtful, and yes, so vulnerable. But I understood her need to be cautious, and I respected her desire to take it slow. My patience was rewarded. The weekend before I was scheduled to head back to finish my business with Sophia, Kyle and Chris wanted me to get a real taste of Montana, so they planned a 4-day ski trip. There's a nice ski resort right outside Bozeman, and Purgatory is real close, but they wanted me to enjoy the whole ski experience. So they pulled some strings with a friend of theirs in the real estate business who helped us get a nice 2-bedroom condo at Telluride, about 70 miles away. I was having dinner with Maureen one night, a few days before we were to leave, when the subject of the trip came up, and she asked what she should bring. I just kind of stared at her, and she gave me a knowing smile. "You knew I was going, didn't you?" she said. "I was hoping, but I didn't know if it was my place to invite you or not," I said. "You know the condo only has 2 bedrooms. And that's a problem, how?" she said, smiling a little wider. "Are you sure?" I said, taking her hands and looking deep into her eyes. "Very sure," she said. "I knew you were the one I've been looking for all my life the first time I met you. I know you know your heart. You're a good man, Alex, and you deserve to be happy." Did she ever? We drove up to Telluride on a cold, clear Thursday morning. The early winter snows had been heavy in the high country, so we figured the skiing would be good, and it was. I had been skiing once before, a long time before, when a group of us from college spent a week at Vail. Maureen had been once before, the previous season, with Kyle and Chris. Despite that limited experience, Maureen and I took the Oneida ski school that was recommended before we tackled the slopes on our own. Once we'd been taught the basics, she and I had a blast going up and down the mountain. We prudently stayed away from the black slopes, the expert trails, but we did try a few of the blue trails, the intermediate slopes, and found we could handle them with a fair bit of skill. It was invigorating to spend time out on the mountain with someone I was growing to care about deeply. I wasn't sure yet if I was in love or if she was in love with me, but we liked each other a lot, and we were comfortable in each other's company. We ended that first day sore and tired, but it was a good kind of soreness and a pleasant tiredness that comes from having a lot of fun. The four of us ended up at a nice, modestly priced restaurant for our post-ski dinner, and we toasted our rapidly growing friendship in every sense of the word. When we got back to the condo, I showered, then sat back on the large bed with a book I'd been reading while Maureen took a long bath. I was toying with the idea of joining her, but decided not to be pushy. I wanted her to make the first move. I'm glad I did. She came into the bedroom smelling like flowers, clad in a long, comfortable robe. She stood just inside the door and smiled at me. Slowly, she undid the sash of the robe and let the sides fall open. "See anything you like?" she said, her soft Irish brogue sounding ever so sweet. I just nodded as I admired Maureen's tall, graceful figure. My God, she was beautiful, with a warm smile and a gentle demeanor that made me feel at ease. I rolled off the bed and walked up to her, letting my hands softly caress her arms as we came together and kissed slowly, with a tenderness that was steadily growing. It was like we were in a world of our own, as I softly slid my hands over her shoulders while she pulled me closer. We walked to the bed then and lay back, our bodies close and our hearts even closer. We spent the evening talking and connecting on a deeper level, sharing our hopes and dreams, and feeling the warmth of each other's company. It was a night I would never forget. The whole trip went like that. We tried just about every non-black slope on the mountain, toured the shops and cafes of downtown Telluride, and spent each evening enjoying each other's company. By the time we got back to Bozeman, we knew it was more than just a passing connection. On the Tuesday before Christmas, I packed my vehicle with a few suitcases and presents for one and all, then headed back east for a few weeks. I went by way of my folks' house but didn't linger. I did visit Donna to give her a present, but I told her I'd found someone in Montana that I wanted to be with, and she smiled as she said she understood. "I'd have expected nothing less from you," she said. Anna Cooper was much the same way when I got back to town and called her up for dinner. "I knew it wouldn't take long for someone to find you," she said. "You're too good a man to stay single very long. I'm glad you're happy." I did not stay at the house when I went back. It wasn't home anymore, and I didn't want to give Sophia any illusions. I did visit quite a bit, and it was cordial enough, but she and I avoided the elephant in the room until after Christmas. It actually wasn't a bad Christmas. Ethan had convinced Sophia to let him move back home, but she finally grew a backbone where he was concerned. He could stay, but he had to pull his weight around the house. Had come dangerously close to some serious trouble when he was living with his buddies, and apparently, it had scared some sense into him because he was talking seriously about entering a rehab program. Lily had really taken my departure as a real warning shot. She ditched the scuzzy boyfriend and was taking more interest in school, figuring out, as I had told her repeatedly in our email exchanges, that without at least a high school diploma, her odds of getting anywhere in life were about nil. She had gotten a part-time job at a youth-oriented novelty shop in the mall, where her quirky style and personality were put to good use. That left Sophia. The day after Christmas, Lily was at work, and I gave Ethan some money and told him to go have fun at the mall. Sophia and I had serious business to discuss, and we needed to be alone. I brought the divorce petition that I'd gotten from Mary Woods and set it on the coffee table in the front room. Sophia just stared at it with sad eyes brimming with tears. "I guess you've made your decision," she said. "I have," I replied, "but I think I deserve some answers first. Why did you cheat on me, Sophia? I know we had problems in our marriage, but if you'd been open about it, we might have worked through those problems. I don't know. I guess I expected you to fight for me, fight for our marriage. That if there was a competitor for my affections, that you'd do what you had to do. It just went too far. I was confused, but that's no excuse. I let it happen, thinking that I could, I don't know, have this little escape, get that feeling out of my system. I really didn't think you'd give up on us that easily. Sophia, what was there to fight for?" I said softly. "You were unhappy all the time. Ethan was one step away from disaster. Lily was heading down a bad path. The house was falling apart. Work was draining. And then you started seeing someone else. Honestly, what was there to fight for? And that still doesn't answer the question of why you decided to betray me and then keep on doing it for months. That's something I just can't get my mind around." "A new experience," Sophia said. "It was a jolt of excitement in a boring life. I guess I just needed something more. But Alex, you have to believe me. I've never stopped loving you. You were always the number one person in my life, and you always will be. I don't doubt that, I said. Although I'm having some trouble believing you loved me when you were with Jake, especially when you were finding excuses to avoid being with me. I may have been the number one person in your life, like you say, but you were still paying a lot of attention to someone else. I'm so sorry about all of that, she said in a very small voice. I guess I lost track of what was really important. So, do you hate me then? No, of course not, I said. We had 20 years together, and a lot of them were good years. You're the mother of my children. Bless their hearts, and I think, in the main, you're a decent person who got lost and made a costly mistake. No, I don't hate you, Sophia, but I don't love you anymore. That died the day I walked in on you and your lover. Maybe we just drifted apart, and Jake saw an opening. Actually, I owe you my thanks. What you did provided the spark that allowed me to have a new life doing things I always wanted to do in places I always wanted to be. Well, it certainly agrees with you, she said finally. You look great. You do deserve to be happy, I guess. And I guess I deserve to be unhappy, don't I? She said as I watched Sophia finally lose her composure. I didn't want to, but I went to her then and held her one last time, letting her cry. After she got calmed down, she signed the divorce agreement, and since we were in a no-fault state, and we were divorcing on the nebulous grounds of irreconcilable differences, it would be final after 60 days. I stayed a couple more days to pack up the rest of my things and to visit with the kids. I was still worried about Ethan, but it looked like Lily was going to be all right. She had found her little niche in retail sales, and she seemed to have gained a newfound respect for me. On the next to last day of the year, I said my final goodbyes and headed off to settle in Bozeman for good. That was a couple of years ago. Kyle's business started to take off in that time, and I found the variety of tasks I was asked to perform to be quite stimulating. I spent a lot of time polishing up my book, and when I had what I believed was a finished product, I started shopping it around to publishers. Rising Again got some nice reviews and managed to make the lower end of some bestseller lists. It's on its third printing and still sells modestly. I'm working on a second book, a novel about redemption, and I have a computer full of odds and ends, essays, and reflections that I may or may not ever get published. Doesn't matter. I'm expressing my creative side in a way I never did before. Maureen and I fell deeper in love, and several months after we met, we were married in a small ceremony there in Bozeman. Lily came out for the wedding, and she and Maureen became close. Lily was promoted to manager of the store where she'd been working and seems to be doing well. Ethan's journey has been more challenging, and he's currently receiving help for his issues. We've stayed friends, and we still talk occasionally, mostly about what to do with Ethan. His struggles have been difficult, but we're hopeful that he will find his way. There are those who say betrayal is a devastating thing, that it destroys lives, and I guess in one sense that may be true. It certainly destroyed my old life, but out of the bitter ashes of that betrayal came a new, far better life for me. I'm living the life I always dreamed about when I was growing up, in a place where I always wanted to be. That would not have happened had I stayed married to Sophia. She did me a favor when she made her mistake, and as a result, I was liberated to follow my own path. The best revenge is living well, and am living a pretty damn good life because of my ex-wife and her decisions. Thanks, guys. I needed that. Thanks for watching this incredible journey of how betrayal can sometimes open the door to a whole new life. If you've ever experienced a moment when a difficult situation led to an unexpected opportunity, we'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let us know how you turned a setback into a new beginning. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire, surprise, and remind us to keep moving forward. See you next time.